Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Do 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 do. 339 came to time. Jackson United, it's time to shine. There's snow, there's snow, there's snow, there's snow. To the window, to the wall, to the wall, to the bartender's last call. At the waterfall, I sleep, sleep, motherfucker. I sleep, sleep, goddamn. I sleep, sleep, motherfucker. I sleep, sleep, goddamn. They'll crunk and act and me. Friends will be resting, they have too much drink in their minds. Everything's fine, they've been after party together about 50 damn times. See the window, to the wall, to the wall. To the bartender's last call. At the waterfall. I sleep, sleep, motherfucker. I sleep, sleep, goddamn, goddamn. I sleep, sleep, motherfucker. I sleep, sleep, goddamn. Do 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 do.
All right, guys, I just wanted to say a huge shout out to Flash, who called this by saying, I knew you would be doing this. Yes, we're actually going to take a little trip down memory lane. I've been waiting for these sidebars to come out. Some of you guys know exactly where this is going. And so for those of you guys who may not know, though, you know, I've had a YouTube channel forever with music and stuff, right? The way that I started covering cases and trials and all the stuff related to law, all goes back to sidebars from Depp v. Heard. And so I wanted to show you guys and take a little trip down memory lane because it's very relevant here with exactly how this all got started. And so the intro that I played for all of the Depp v. Heard with the sidebars, the intro that I had there basically explains it all. So we're going to take a quick little look at that. Give me 1 sec to unshare, reshare. Also, I'm so happy to see you guys. I've missed you guys. I've been so busy. I hope you guys are all doing amazing. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Sweet. All right.
I pledge my eternal gratitude to any law nerd who would edit and combine original Emily's live coverage of this trial with sidebars coverage at specific moments. That sounds like a doctoral project.
Challenge accepted. Okay, so there's that. Now, give me just 1 sec. So basically, as you guys may or some of y'all know, OG squirrels know, but anyone who's new may not know. So that's how all this got started, right? So I have not had another opportunity because it's so rare that we get sidebars to do another gavel to gavel complete trial with all the sidebars. Okay. So, but I wanted to show because it's really relevant. This little clip of Wrongful. So we've got Wrongful commenting. I'm sure other people have commented, but here's what Wrongful had to say about people requesting the trial plus sidebars. All right.
And I am really excited about that. I am really, really kind of eager because, I mean, now I'm like, hey, it's kind of an adventure. I kind of wonder about like the adventure of going through and watching the trial again and seeing every sidebar and being like, okay, now we get to see the sidebars. That would probably be too much effort, too much time, too much whatever. But yeah.
Challenge accepted, just like the first time. So here we go, guys. I don't know if anybody else on YouTube is taking this task on. I don't care if they are or not, but that's what we do here. We take on the impossible, including this effort. So there's been a ton of sidebars released. I think it's all of the first trial. If not, it's the vast majority of the first trial. I've got all of them downloaded. And so it'll take us a good while to get through all that. But here's the other thing I wanted to say. That I'm super excited about this because when the way the first trial started, right? I wasn't following Karen Reed at all up until I heard Yannetti's opening statement. And so, but I wasn't planning on covering it. By the time I jumped in to start covering it, it was a couple of days in and I didn't want to get too behind. So when we covered this the first time, I believe we jumped in with the witnesses from that time. And Fender's here also. Fender, hi. Oh my God. I just now saw that. Yay, Fender's here. Awesome. So we got some OG squirrels in the house. And so basically, point being that I don't think we have actually watched from trial number 1. I don't think we've watched the opening statements together and the first couple witnesses together on this channel. I don't think we have. So as far as the first trial goes, we've got that we haven't watched together. And then as far as the rest of the trial, I haven't watched any of it since the trial, and we haven't done anything with it here on the channel, apart from we've gone back and watched some of like Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe, Trooper Proctor, Trooper Paul. We've gone back and watched some of the key highlights, but this is going to be really interesting going back and watching the trial gavel to gavel now that feels like forever. It's been like a year and a half or so. So this is really exciting. Also, I just wanted to say real quick, huge shout out to Kitsmits and also to Super Planner Girl who came in clutch. For any of you guys who've heard me talking about, how I was getting my notary in North Carolina, it's really difficult. They do not make it easy. In fact, it's ridiculously hard. And by that, I mean, not like it's actually difficult, but like you just have to jump through so many freaking hoops and it's completely nonsensical. Like the exam is freaking easy, but then the rest of it is like it's a lot. And so, huge shout out to Kitsmits. I wanted to show you guys this real quick. Oh, hold on. Where'd it go? Because it was successful. So hold on. Let me just unshare, reshare real quick. And so this is going to be a picture from my office at work. And there it is. Burr, 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 burr. Got it done. Got my big certificate. I got my seal. And then those scales there, my brother gave those to me for my birthday. The scales of justice. And what's really interesting about these particular scales is that it doesn't move. They stay balanced at all times, which gives me goosebumps just to even think about. Like he did that he got that on purpose because it's like these scales of justice are always balanced and equal. So there's my certificate. Notary Public. I've got my seal and I am now a notary and I haven't notarized anything yet, but I'm sure I will soon. And so huge shout out to Kitsmits and Super Planner Girl who came in clutch helping me out with some of the requirements that we had for this. And yeah. And shout out to Kat Randall. Happy to see you guys. I'm so happy to see all of y'all. So happy to see you guys. So, okay. We've got plenty to get caught up on. And don't worry, as always, I've been keeping a freaking list. But for now, this is actually really funny. We're going to jump in. Give me 1 second. Okay, unshare, reshare one more time because that's StreamYard still makes you do that, which is crazy. It's had a lot of updates apparently, but it hasn't changed that thing. Okay. All right. And let me just move that. Okay, perfect. Good. Excellent. Okay. So are you guys ready for this? Oh, Flash has signed up for a legal support education program. Well, that's fun. Congrats. Love it. Let us know what you learn and what you end up doing. And so I hope all of you guys had a wonderful holiday. I guess we're still in the throes of holidays because it hasn't been New Year's yet. Let me know what you guys have been up to. I love y'all. And so yeah. Okay. So I know, right? The OG crew. We need the rest of the OGs here. So, all right. So hopefully you guys can hear everything. Let's jump right on into this. So day one, here we go. Starts off with a bang. Y'all ready?
Thank you. Please be seated. Close down session.
All right.
22117, the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. Can I have counsel?
Could we wait on the introduction?
Oh, sure.
Could I just please see counsel at sidebar?
Right there. I mean, perfect, right? I mean, amazing. Like literally, let's watch this again now that I've got everything situated, because so par for the course, right? Like, let's watch this again.
Thank you. Please be seated. Close down session.
All right.
22117, the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. Can I have counsel?
Could we wait on the introduction?
Oh, sure.
Could I just please see counsel at sidebar? Thanks, Chair.
Starts off with a sidebar. All right, let's go, guys. Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. See, I wish there was a way to do it where I don't have to just switch like this every time. I'll see if I can figure something out, but StreamYard does not make that easy. Okay, so, all right, here we go. All right, so I've gone ahead and marked where all the sidebars are. Here, there it is, the court. Judge Bev, could I please see counsel at sidebar? Whereupon there was a sidebar conference as follows. So a lot of this is redacted initially because juror stuff. Okay, but then we get some actual sidebar. Sidebar, it's a sidebar. You guys remember that sidebar song? All the Fender actually was ahead of the game with that one, right? All the sidebar songs. All right. So let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see if you wanted to follow along. The court. All right. Is there anything we need to talk about before we get started? Okay. Sorry. I just have to say, she called the sidebar right off the bat. So why is she asking if there's anything that they need to talk about? Sorry. Okay. The clerk. No, Your Honor. Mr. Lawley. Oh, you mean by Mr. Lawley, perchance, is that the lolly bird? I do believe it is. Lolly. It doesn't have to be now, but I just wanted to address the issue of exhibits before we start with any witnesses. That's all. Why has this not already been done? Sorry, that's me thinking out loud. The court. What issue with exhibits? Lolly. So I don't think anything has been, despite our best efforts, I don't think anything has been pre-marked yet. Why the fuck not? That's my commentary. I think there is a list as far as an agreement, as far as different exhibits and what they'd be numbered. I just am looking for some guidance from the court as to how you want to refer to them. Like exhibit one, whatever, like you say the exhibit and the number. Why is this so hard? That's what she said. The court. Well, I believe that Miss King, James, happy to see you. Woo! Yay, all the friends are here, reunited, and it feels so good. Kid Smiths is reading my mind saying, oh yes, back when Lolly was allowed to speak and move, right? I kind of forgot about him. That's why I was like, oh yeah, Lolly, the Lolly bird. Yeah, we haven't had any cause for the Lolly bird to make an appearance in a long ass time. You're so right about that though, Fender, with the holiday sidebar songs. You're right. Okay, we'll do it. We'll do it the next time we get to a sidebar, because it has to be, when we get to a sidebar. Great idea. Thank you. Okay, so he's confused as to how to announce the sidebars, the exhibit numbers. Jesus Christ. The court. Well, I believe that Miss King would tell you that she will be here at 8:30 every morning, and one lawyer from each side has to be here if you want anything marked from 8:30 to 8:50, and that's it. Lolly. Okay. The court. All right. Is there anything more? Do you want to come over here? The court reporter. I explained it to both sides this morning. Miss McLaughlin was present for the prosecution. Everyone was in agreement. Lolly. No, I'm still in agreement with that. I'm more just seeking your guidance as far as what you want me to call something without. The court. Are you using exhibits today? Lolly. Yes. There's not very many of them, but yes. The court. Mark them one at a time as we go. The court reporter. Sure, I'm ready to go. The court. Okay, let's do that. If they are agreed upon, you can just bring them up and they will be marked as you go to introduce them. As we might remember, this kind of falls apart. Like they have a system and then it all goes to shit. Mr. Lawley. Okay. The court. Okay. Anything else? Mr. Lawley. No, Your Honor. The court. All right. So it will take a few minutes to get the jurors over here. So let's take 5 minutes. Lawley. Okay. Jackson. Sure. Are they ready to come over? Court officer. Not yet. Court. Okay. Brief recess. The clerk. The jury's present. And then now she's talking to the jurors, and she is going to be giving an introduction as to and we're going to skip over the preliminary jury instructions, and we're going to go ahead to opening statements as far as the trial. So let me pull that back up. Okay. So let's see where this is at. Okay, that's her doing the preliminary jury instructions. And there he is, guys. Oh my God. Let's see what this word.
Please have no contact with any of the participants in this trial or anyone associated with either side, including the lawyers. Please do not visit any locations that may be mentioned during the trial. We will go on a view and I will discuss it as hard as you in the law.
Go ahead.
Voice up, please.
Here we go, guys. Okay, sorry. This needs some sort of wait, we have a thing for this. This needs like a sound, like here he comes, guys. Where is it? This might be loud, just warning you guys. Where is it? Here it is.
And I ask only that you keep your voice up, please.
I'll
Do my best. Good morning. So as Ron was telling you, this is one of the two opportunities that I will get to address you. The first of which right now, essentially what I'm going to attempt to do, and I know you heard over the course of the impairment process a number of different witnesses that were listed out as far as potential witnesses in this case. So what my intent here is to provide as much of a roadmap as I can through those waters and help you to navigate sort of who these people are and what relation they have to this case. Let me start with John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe.
Sorry. Okay, let me just back up. I don't know that I've ever actually watched his opening statement because as y'all know, when I was, whatever I was doing, the trial came on. Again, I wasn't planning on following the trial, didn't follow the case. And it was like right at the part of Yannetti's opening statements where he's like, Karen was framed. I don't know that I ever watched Lolly's opening statement. And I'm actually questioning, is this even his opening statement? Because how the heck is that? I mean, it sounds almost like voir dire. Because how do you start an opening statement? I mean, he just got a bugle and everything. How is this the start of an opening statement? Hold on.
Do my best. Good morning. So as Ron was telling you, this is one of the two opportunities that I will get to address you.
Yeah, this is his opening statement. Wow.
The first of which right now, essentially what I'm going to attempt to do, and I know you heard over the course of the impairment process a number of different witnesses that were listed out as far as potential witnesses in this case. So what my intent here is to provide as much of a roadmap as I can through those waters and help you to navigate sort of who these people are.
We basically just told them, you guys heard a bunch of witnesses during voir dire. This is going to be really complicated. I'm going to attempt to explain to you who the witnesses are. What? Compelling, right? Super compelling. Oh my God. Yes, I know Jackson is representing Nick Reiner. Yes, yes. Yeah, Kit Smits, that makes sense. She says, I completely forgot anything about his opening except that it sounded like a Begat chapter of the Bible. Clearly, he's setting the stage for that to be the case. So, and I mean, it will forever remain a mystery to me how he got the jury to hang, but yes, very true. While Brennan was more compelling, it was also far more, I don't know, y'all fill in the blank. Like Lolly is like incompetent, boring. Somehow he got them to hang though. I mean, it's a great point. I don't know. It'll be interesting as we go through and watch this trial again to try to parse out, all of us together here, just how the heck Lolly was more successful than Brennan in that regard. Was it because of the jury? Was it just who's on the jury? Was that the difference? Was it more based upon the defense's different strategy? Like, what were the factors here? Because usually you would think a more compelling prosecutor would be more likely to get a more favorable outcome for the prosecution. So yeah.
And what relation they have to the states. We start with John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe grew up in Braintree. He was 46 years old when he passed. He was the son of John O'Keefe Jr. and Margaret or Peggy O'Keefe. He was a brother to Paul O'Keefe and to his sister Kristen Furbush. Kristen was married to John's brother-in-law, was a man named Stephen, and they had two children who were very young in 2013. Now, in 2013, Kristen, unfortunately, tragically, passed away, succumbing to cancer in November of 2013. Within months of that, Mr. O'Keefe's brother-in-law and Kristen's husband, Stephen, passed away as well. Now, initially, when John O'Keefe's sister passed away, sort of the initial plan for that situation was that John O'Keefe was going to move in with Stephen Forbush and kids and assist as far as raising.
This isn't, I'm sorry, but like, what the heck? I mean, of all those strategies, I mean, okay, let me back up. I think there's a lack of strategy because this is not a strategy for opening statements. Like, wow. I mean, if I were on the jury, I would already be like bored out of my mind here.
And then when Stephen passed away a few months after his wife, before those plans could be finalized, John O'Keefe then moved in with his niece and nephew and assumed the parental role and assumed legal guardianship with respect to both of those children. Now, he was assisted in this by a great number of people within the town of Canton where the Forbushes lived and where John moved into the home with the two children there.
Wow.
There were other parents within the neighborhood, other parents within the children's age group. You'll hear from a number of them over the course of this trial, but they included Mrs. Carrie Roberts and Mrs. Jennifer McCabe. They helped Mr. O'Keefe out during those initial stages and during the time that he assumed this role. He also got help from his work. John O'Keefe was a proud member of the Boston Police Department, had been for many years. He had been a patrolman prior to moving in with the children and assuming this role. Boston Police Department helped him greatly as far as positioning him as more of a desk role, working in the sex offender unit with more regular hours to sort of assimilate himself to this new life and this new role that he assumes with these children. Initially, John O'Keefe lived in the house with the kids. However, in 2018, they moved into a new home, so a new home that they could have as their own. That home is located also within the town of Canton, sort of on the Stoughton side of Canton at One Meadows Avenue. John O'Keefe raised these children, assuming guardianship for them for about 8
I mean, I just want to address, so Kid Smith makes a great point that the quote unquote strategy, such that it is for Lolly here, right, was to play on the jury's sympathy by showing what a great person John O'Keefe was. Look at the stand-up dude, then she, but then the delivery though. I mean, I don't even need to tell you guys this, right? It's like, if that's your strategy, you don't start out with like that whole preamble about how he's going to attempt to navigate them through the murky waters of the long list of witnesses. Okay. Like, wow, way to get them excited about the trial. Not you start out with, just throwing it out here, right? Law enforcement officer, whatever, the, father to 2 kids that were not his own, decorated officer, beloved friend. You start out with that, and then you say, that's who John O'Keefe was until this defendant killed him. I mean, there's just ways to make it more compelling, right? I mean, you guys know. I mean, it's just doesn't.
years. His niece, who was the elder of the two, was about 14 at the time that John O'Keefe died, and his nephew was about 11 years old at the time that John O'Keefe died. January 28th, 2022. It was a relatively typical day. It was a Friday.
I just want to note also, he's got his pen in his hand, and he's marking things off the list. I understand having an outline, although his outline sucks, but I understand having an outline. But to have the pen in your hand and keep it in your hand and mark things off as you go, that's normal for, like, if you're examining a witness, but like, this is crazy.
Going into a Saturday of January 29th. Sort of typical in the sense of most sort of suburban parents. There were a lot of activities, weekend sports, practices, games, things of that nature that the O'Keefe and Forbush family had to look forward to. One little difference when it came to that particular day of January 28th and the 29th is the weather. So there had been predicted.
Speaking of the weather, right there, you guys. Oh my God, the weather. Just like in the song, right, from the beginning of this live stream, there's snow, there's snow, there's snow. Oh, we're going to get to all the snow. I'm going to have to do a counter for that too, guys. We're going to have to do a counter for the number of times he talks about the snow and the shoveling of the apron.
Came to that particular day of January 28th and the 29th is the weather. So there had been predicted, and there was going to be a snowstorm, an insignificant one. A blizzard essentially was coming in overnight that Friday and the Saturday, lasting through most of the day on Saturday the 29th. And as a result of that, most of those sort of typical weekend routine activities that would keep most people, including those within the town, busy, have been canceled ahead of time. Everybody knew what was coming. Everybody knew essentially you weren't going to leave your house all that much the following day. Now, also on January 28th, Mr. O'Keefe had received some news in respect to his niece. So his niece and her best friend were in 8th grade at the time, going to high school in the fall of 2022. They both applied to a private school called Michigan, and they both found out on the 28th that they had been accepted. So the friend, as well as her father, a gentleman by the name of Michael Camerano, who's both he and his wife, Catherine Camerano, were friendly with John O'Keefe. They had children around the same ages as both John's niece and his nephew. And they had come over to their house on Meadows Ave that evening to celebrate girls getting into bed. The nephew of John, the 11-year-old, was sleeping over a friend's house that night. He left that home sometime around 7 p.m. or so, got picked up and went to sleep over at his friend's house. John O'Keefe and Michael Camerano then decided to travel out to a local establishment on Washington Street called C.F. McCarthy's Bar and Restaurant. You're going to hear testimony, and you're going to see surveillance video, and you're going to see receipts and all kinds of things from a variety of different establishments, all sort of located within Camden Center.
Guys, if you're on the jury, right, buckle up, jury, get excited. You're going to see receipts. Oh my God.
Along that strip of Washington Street. Now, they get Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Camerano leave the girls at home. They then go to C.F. McCarthy's, arriving there sometime between 7:30 and 8 p.m. They eventually cajole another friend of theirs, Mr. Kurt Roberts, to come out to the bar and join them as well. And there's some other people that are located within the bar, including Mr. James Sullivan, who we hear from, who was present at the bar that night as well. Eventually, the defendant, Karen Reed, joins them at this establishment, C.F. McCarthy's, sometime just before 9 p.m. Now, John O'Keefe and Karen Reed had met sometime in 2004. They had dated briefly during that time and reconnected sometime around March of 2020, around the time of the COVID-19 sort of pandemic shutdown. They had started dating around that time period, or reconnected during that time period, and the defendant had stayed at the house in Canton several nights a week. She had helped out with the children. In the month or so leading up to Mr. O'Keefe's death, the relationship soured. You will see text messages between Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed to that effect. You will hear testimony from the children, from John's niece and nephew, in regard to things they observed within that relationship. And you'll hear testimony from other individuals as far as their observations or things that they heard.
By the way, I'm sorry the audio is so shitty, but this is just how the feed was on this day for opening statements. As you guys know, there were a bunch of technical difficulties and hiccups and everything. And the audio was also had a lot of struggles during the retrial for opening statements. But anyway, it is what it is. But we got subtitles on, so. 29th, 2022. Just after 6 a.m., Canton Police Department receives a 911 call from a woman reporting a male party, subsequently identified as John O'Keefe, found in the snow outside a residence. Oh, did he say Sister Sullivan were at the bar? If he did, I missed that. Let me back it up. I was creating a counter for things. Okay, let's see here.
Initially, cajole another friend of theirs, Mr. Kurt Roberts, to come out to the bar and join them as well. And there's some other people that are located within the bar, including Mr. James Sullivan, who we hear from, who was present at the bar that night as well.
Mr. James Sullivan? Do we hear from Mr. James Sullivan? So you heard Sullivan, but that's not the sisters. Who the fuck is that?
Eventually,
I don't think we hear from him. He says we're going to hear from him. I don't think we hear from him.
The defendant, Karen Reed, joins them at this establishment, C.F. McCarthy's, sometime just before 9 p.m. Now, John O'Keefe and Karen Reed had met sometime in 2004. They had dated briefly during that time and reconnected sometime around March of 2020, around the time of the COVID-19 sort of pandemic shutdown. They had started dating around that time period, or reconnected during that time period, and the defendant had stayed at the house in Canton several nights a week. She had helped out with the children. In the month or so leading up to Mr. O'Keefe's death, the relationship soured. You will see text messages between Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed to that effect. You will hear testimony from the children, from John's niece and nephew, in regard to things they observed within that relationship. And you'll hear testimony from other individuals as far as their observations or things that they heard. Turning to January 29th, 2022. Just after 6 a.m., Canton Police Department receives a 911 call from a woman reporting a male party, subsequently identified as John O'Keefe, found in the snow outside a residence at 34 Fairview Road. At the time, as I mentioned, blizzards that had been predicted was occurring, heavy snow, temperatures in the teens, wind bustling around. Officer Stephen Saraf and Officer Stephen Mulaney of the Canton Police were dispatched along with Canton Fire and EMS, and you'll hear from them in regards to their response to what they observed on scene. In particular, with Officer Saraf, who have as an exhibit anticipates a cruiser camera video from his cruiser detailing or memorializing sort of his response in the darkness, in the blizzard-type conditions as he's driving from the Canton Police Station, where he was located when he received the call, to 34 Fairview Road. When they arrived there, they observed three females, sort of off to the left side of the property. When I say the left side of the property, I mean if you're standing out in the street facing 34 Fairview Road, off to the left side of the property, there's a flagpole, there's a fire hydrant, there's some bushes. That is where Mr. O'Keefe is located. On the right side of the property is sort of the driveway and the mailbox, other things that you'll become familiar with through photographic evidence and other means of this trial. The three females that the officers observed there were then identified as defendant Karen Reed, Mrs. Jennifer McCabe, who had received a phone call earlier in the morning from the defendant, as well as Mrs. Terry Roberts, who had also received a phone call early that morning from the defendant. The several firefighters from the Canton Fire Department you'll hear from in regard to their observations of injuries, abrasions, and lacerations to the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe. You'll hear their testimony in regard to swelling of his eyes. Other injuries that he observed, they observed redness from the cold that he had been lying out in for some time. You'll hear the testimony from these firefighters, Timothy Nuttall, Anthony Flamati, Matthew Kelly, Francis Walsh, Jay McLaughlin, and Greg Woodward. And at least from three of those firefighters, you'll hear testimony anticipates detailing statements that the defendant made to them when they had asked about the origination of some of those injuries. The defendant stated repeatedly, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Mr. O'Keefe was then taken from the front lawn onto what they call a scoop stretcher. As he's doing that, I anticipate you'll hear Ms. Roberts' testimony that despite the 6 inches of snow approximately that was on top of Mr. O'Keefe's body and the snow throughout the roadway, front yard, everywhere around where he was, there was grass underneath Mr. O'Keefe, where his cell phone was located underneath his body as he lay on that front lawn. He was then transported by firefighters Kelly, Flamati, and Nuttall, as well as the ambulance being driven by firefighter McLaughlin to the Good Samaritan Medical Center. Once there were some observations, and you'll hear testimony from Dr. Justin Rice from that facility as far as observations consistent with what I anticipate you'll hear from those firefighters. But then there is a certain warming procedure that they go through trying to bring his body temperature up. Because when Mr. O'Keefe arrives at the Good Samaritan Medical Center, his body temperature is 80. And after those resuscitative efforts prove unsuccessful, Mr. O'Keefe is eventually pronounced by Dr. Rice at approximately 7:50. Shortly after that, when the defendant is then being driven away from the scene by Ms. Roberts, who is now going to go pick up Mr. and Mrs. O'Keefe, Jonathan's parents in Braintree, and bring them to the Samaritan Medical Center in Brockton, the defendant makes some statements of self-harm. As a result of that, she's then transported to the Good Samaritan Medical Center as well by two firefighters named Daniel Whitley and Jason Barrett. And amongst the statements that they gained from the defendant as they're having a conversation.
He's not kidding about attempting, using his words there, attempting to navigate the long list of witnesses. There's no reason why in this opening statement they need to try to, there shouldn't be this many names, right? Like, this is insanity. I can't even keep up. Like, he's already named what, probably 36 different people between everybody at the bar, the whole backstory of John O'Keefe, everybody at the bar, and now every single first responder. It's like, what are you doing? I mean, he was not kidding that that's what he's attempting to do, but like, why? Tell me why.
With her in regard to that, in regard to her treatment and diagnosis, she indicates that the last that she saw Mr. O'Keefe, they had gotten into an argument before he had gotten out of the car in front of Fairview Road. Now, you'll also hear testimony from some of the other first responding officers from the Canton Police Department, including Lieutenant Paul Gallagher, Sergeant Sean Good, and Sergeant Michael Lent, in regard to their initial response, their observations, people that they spoke to, where they went, and their ability to recover within these blizzard conditions that are still ongoing, certain pieces of evidence that they located around the area where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found. You'll also hear from Lieutenant Charles Ray of the Canton Police Department, who was tasked with, at this point in time, the Canton Police weren't aware that the nephew was over at sleepover. They weren't aware that Mr. Camarano had come over to the residence on Meadows Ave and picked up the niece, bringing her back to his house as she was left unattended when the defendant left to go looking for Mr. O'Keefe. So unaware of that, they go do a well-being check at approximately 8:22 in the morning. And they also have cruiser camera video attached to their cruiser. You'll see that video and when they pull into the driveway at Meadows Ave, approximately 8:22 in the morning, they pull in directly behind where eventually you'll hear Mr. McCabe left the defendant's vehicle after driving it from courthouse to Meadows Ave in search of Mr. O'Keefe. And you'll have that that footage, and you'll be able to see the back of the defendant's vehicle, specifically the right rear taillight of that. Now, you'll also hear testimony, as I mentioned, from the Cameranos, from Mr. Roberts, from Mr. Sullivan. Also, they were all present with the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe at C.F. McCarthy's. You'll hear testimony from a number of other individuals who were at the Waterfall. The Waterfall was a bar located across the street, essentially, from C.F. McCarthy's on Washington Street in Canton Center, and somewhere that Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant went after leaving C.F. McCarthy's at approximately 11 p.m. Now, from that establishment, you'll hear from Rebecca Schreers, who was working as a bartender at the Waterfall that evening. You'll hear from a couple named Nicholas and Karina Polakaitis, who were friends of friends, who had known Mr. O'Keefe through their daughter around the same age as Mr. O'Keefe's niece. Mrs. Polakaitis had some conversation with the defendant that evening, as well as herself and Mrs. McCabe at the Waterfall. She left around the same time as they did. She parked on Washington Street around the same area as Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Reed did, specifically in Mr. Reed's car. And she observed Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant walking toward the defendant's vehicle, and specifically the defendant walking towards the driver's side. Now, you'll hear testimony from a Christopher and Julie Albert, who were people who were at one point neighbors of Mr. O'Keefe. They knew him well from being neighbors of him. Christopher Albert owns a pizza shop, also located within that Canton Center area. Mr. O'Keefe, earlier in the day of the 28th, had been into that pizza shop along with his nephew to get the nephew a slice. Christopher Albert and Mr. O'Keefe had some conversation regarding what they were doing that night, and it's Christopher Albert who actually texts Mr. O'Keefe and indicates that they're over at the Waterfall and that he should come over shortly before Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant make their way from C.F. McCarthy's home. Now, Christopher Albert left directly from the Waterfall and went home. He was sort of walking distance away from them. His wife, Julie Albert, had left earlier in the evening. There was a band playing at the Waterfall that night. Julie Albert started to get a migraine, and she left before most of the group. Included within that group, and sort of how they came to the Waterfall, the Albert family in particular, Julie Albert went there along with her sister-in-law, Nicole Albert, as well as her niece, Caitlin Albert, her niece's boyfriend, Mr. Morris, and they had had dinner at the Waterfall earlier in that evening. Now, Nicole Albert lives at 34 Fairview Road. She has a husband named Brian Albert, who's also a Boston.
Oh my God.
Brian Albert had gone with a friend of his, who's also in law enforcement, a man named Brian Higgins. They had gone separately, but had come home together from a funeral for a fallen police officer in New York City. Came home early to sort of beat the weather, and eventually they meet up with Brian Albert's family at the Waterfall. Now, Tristan Morris, who was Caitlin Albert's boyfriend, had left the Waterfall at some point in the evening. He then returns later to the residence on Fairview Road and picks up Caitlin Albert and brings him home. All of this is in relation to Brian Albert and Nicole Albert's son, Brian Albert Jr., whose birthday was coming up the following day, the day of the snowstorm on the 29th. So he had been back at the house at 34 Fairview while his family was out at the Waterfall. He had a number of friends that had come over that evening to celebrate his birthday with him. Now, among those friends was two individuals named Sarah Levinson and Julie Nagel, and they were at the residence at 34 Fairview for a good portion. Now, those individuals from the Waterfall that leave and then come to 34 Fairview, they do so sometime shortly after midnight. Shortly after midnight is when it starts to snow. Flurries are starting to come down. Snow is starting to stick to some
I
degree.
just wanted to know also, we're listening to this on 1.25 speed. I just have so much sympathy for the jury. I mean, this is craziness. Oh, that's funny. Kismet saying, yeah, you almost missed him calling because he had a Christopher. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Roads or front lawn.
Maybe we should bump it up to 1.5. It's brutal. It's really fucking brutal.
Grassy areas.
Now I know what I was not missing when I didn't hear this the first time.
Now, from that group, the group that goes back is obviously Brian Albert and Nicole Albert, if they live there. Caitlin Albert, because it's her parents.
They live there.
As well as Jennifer McCabe, who's Nicole Albert's sister, and her husband, Matthew McCabe. They go back to that, and there's an open invitation to essentially anybody that's there. John O'Keefe takes them up. There's certain text messages and phone conversations between John O'Keefe and Jennifer McCabe as to where this house is located, as he's never been there before. And then he and the defendant drive in the defendant's vehicle to 34 Fairview. And once there are several witnesses from within the home that observe the vehicle parking. So I mentioned earlier there were two females that were with Brian Albert Jr. at the house, one of them being Julie Nagel.
Oh my God.
At some point, she had called her brother, Mr. Ryan, for a ride home. He then gets a ride from his friends, Ricky Antonio, as well as his Mr. Nagel's girlfriend, Heather Max, was riding in the back of Mr. Antonio's pickup truck. I say that because they arrive at Fairview Road around the same time as the defendant. The defendant is coming in from one direction, the pickup truck with the Nagel brothers coming in from another direction. The pickup truck with the Nagel brothers riding in flashes its light, signaling the defendant to go. She goes first, they follow in behind, and lo and behold, they end up at the same house. They parked the pickup truck somewhere in that right side of the property, facing it from the street in the area of the driveway, and the defendant in her black Lexus SUV parks a little bit further up. Different people from within the pickup and different people from within the house observe that Lexus SUV in one location, pull up a little bit further, and then pull up a little bit further until it's in the area of that fire hydrant, of that flagpole, where Mr. O'Keefe is located the following morning. Now, from their position, I anticipate the testimony that you're going to hear is that Heather Maxson from that pickup truck observes a male passenger and female operator when the pickup truck operator flashes those lights at the vehicles are facing each other before they pull down the Fairview. What you'll hear also, I anticipate, from all three of those individuals in the pickup and Julie Nagel, who comes out to the pickup to talk to the brother, is that no one ever exits that vehicle. There are no footprints around that vehicle. There's no damage that they observed for that vehicle at that time. Again, it's just started to snow. Things aren't sticking really too much at this point. Julie Nagel has a conversation with her brother, decides that she's going to stay at the house longer, so arrangements for a ride home, and the pickup truck leaves from that point. As they pass by, they observe a female operator matching what I submitted as the description of the defendant. From all of those people within that house that evening, none of them at any point in time observed John O'Keefe come into the house. They see the vehicle up front, they see the vehicle pull away, and they just assume that they went, and no one was coming. We hear testimony from other individuals who were at the house that night, including Colin Albert, who is Julian Christopher Albert's son. He's also the cousin of Brian Albert Jr., who was having people over for his birthday. He's leaving the house around the time that the initial people coming back from Waterfall, which includes the homeowners, Mr. Higgins, which was coming into the house. At that point, Colin Albert was leaving. He's getting picked up by a young lady named Alice McCabe, who was Jennifer and Matthew McCabe's daughter, who's also friends with Colin Albert and also cousins of Brian Albert Jr. Celebrating his birthday. As I mentioned, you'll hear testimony from Matthew McCabe and from Jennifer in regard to their observations that particular evening, both at the Waterfall as well as at the residence on Fairview Road. And then you'll hear testimony in regard to a phone call. A phone call that Jennifer McCabe receives from John O'Keefe's niece at approximately 4:53 in the morning. She answers that phone call, speaks to the niece briefly, and the niece hands the phone over to the defendant. Now, you'll hear testimony from the niece as well, that about 4:30 in the morning or so, the defendant came into her room in a frantic state, saying that Mr. O'Keefe had not come home that night. So initially, when the defendant is talking to Ms. McCabe, she indicates to Ms. McCabe that the last time she saw Mr. O'Keefe was at the Waterfall. Eventually, as Ms. McCabe is waking up, she reminds the defendant that she not only saw them leave the Waterfall around the same time as herself, but also saw the vehicle, the defendant's vehicle, outside of the home on Fairview Road. Eventually, the defendant, while driving around, this will come in as far as other testimony, related testimony as it develops. But she's driving around that morning. She's calling a bunch of number of different people, friends of Mr. O'Keefe. She's calling Mr. O'Keefe himself.
Oh, it's Lolly.
She also calls.
You know, it might be more enjoyable.
Mr. Roberts receives a call about 5 a.m. from the defendant indicating that Mr. O'Keefe did not come home, indicating that he got hit by a plow or that he must be dead. Ms. Roberts then gets ready. Mr. McCabe is getting ready as well, sort of planning to go out and look for Mr. O'Keefe to see if they can locate him. They call numerous times. You can see that within the text messages and the phone interactions from a variety of people throughout the course of this trial as well. So eventually, the defendant comes to Ms. McCabe's home, indicates at some points prior to that she has cracked hip. Ms. McCabe then gets in the driver's seat due to the defendant's frantic state. Ms. Roberts is there as well. Ms. Roberts follows Ms. McCabe driving the defendant's vehicle back to Mr. O'Keefe's residence on Meadows Ave, checks on the niece. The defendant then shows both Ms. Roberts and Ms. McCabe the damage to her right rear taillight, which is essentially missing a number of different pieces from that right rear taillight. They then proceed off to drive and see if they can locate Mr. O'Keefe. The defendant is insistent that they go to that residence on Fairview Road. Again, they're driving down there in the dark, in snow, in the wind, in the blizzard. As they approach towards that residence, there's one person, so they're seated within the vehicle. This is Ms. Roberts' vehicle. She's driving. Mrs. McCabe is in the front passenger seat. The defendant is in the rear passenger seat. The defendant is the only one who sees Mr. O'Keefe. He yells and screams at Ms. Roberts to stop.
It's just, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's just the most, I've never in my life, this has got to be one of, if not the worst opening statements I have ever heard. I'm trying to think. There was one that was really bad in a recent trial, and it was for the defendant, the defense attorney for the defendant. I can't remember what I at this point, and I can't even recall. This is got to be the worst I've heard that I can think of. Y'all in the chat, let me know if there was one that I'm forgetting that was, you know, as bad or worse. But Jesus, though, like crazy.
Roberts and Ms. McCabe, I anticipate, will testify that they did not see Mr. O'Keefe, not only as they were driving past him, but even after they got out of the vehicle until the defendant gets out of the back seat and makes a beeline essentially right over to where Mr. O'Keefe's body is found. Mrs. McCabe then dials 911, and shortly after that is when the officers and McCabe firefighters arrive on scene. Now, while they're waiting there, at approximately 6:23, 6:24 a.m., during a conversation with the defendant asks Mrs. McCabe to look up on her phone how long someone has to be out in the cold to die from
Here we go.
something to that effect. And you'll hear some dispute as to when that search was made. And you'll hear testimony from 3 different forensic extraction experts, Nicholas Carino, Ms. Jessica Hyde, and Mr. Ian Whitfield. You'll hear about a lot of these things called extraction reports from cell phones. And the extraction reports are done with a program called Sullivan. Mr. Whiffen is someone who writes that software for Sullivan. I anticipate you'll hear from each of their testimonies that Google search that was done on Ms. McCabe's phone was done at the same time frame that she indicates the defendant requested her to do it, and that at 6:23 and 6:24 morning. We'll hear testimony from Ms. Roberts and Ms. McCabe, the firefighters and the responding Canton police officers about repeated phraseology that the defendant stated while there, asking again and again in regards to Mr. O'Keefe, is he dead? He's dead. You'll also hear testimony, as I indicated, about sort of treatment that she received at the Good Samaritan Medical Center, and that would involve testimony from Ms. Daisy Wormseth, Ms. Kathleen Wilford, and Dr. Gary Fowler. We'll hear testimony from a number of different analysts from the State Police Crime Lab and from some other laboratories as well. Included within that will be Mr. Nicholas Roberts, Ms. Maureen Hartnett, Mr. Andre Coyle, Ms. Ashley Vallier, and Ms. Christina Hammond, those all being from the State Police.
There's no need to be.
You will hear testimony in regard
Not necessary.
to an incident which occurred earlier in January, right around New Year's. Mr. O'Keefe, defendant, and the children have been invited with a much larger group, approximately 70 people or so, to spend New Year's in Aruba. This is a trip that was organized by a friend of Mr. O'Keefe's named Laura Sullivan. We'll hear testimony from her, as well as from her sister, Ms. Marietta Sullivan, as well as you'll hear testimony from two children in relation to this. And essentially, day two or so of this trip, Marietta Sullivan, the sister of Laura, is walking through the lobby and she runs into Mr. O'Keefe. So someone she refers to as godfather, because John O'Keefe is also the godfather of Laura Sullivan's son. Runs into him in the lobby, gives him a hug, and sort of points him in the direction of where she believes he's going into his room. The defendant is in the area. The defendant starts yelling and screaming and swearing at Ms. Sullivan. Ms. Sullivan responds in kind. Essentially, for the most part, the Sullivan sisters see very little of Mr. O'Keefe throughout the remainder of their trip to Aruba. And we also give testimony from the children that shortly after this, or immediately after this, there is an approximately 20-minute screaming match going on between Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant within their hotel room in front of the children. Now, you'll also hear testimony from the defendant's phone in regard to, and from another individual's phone in regard to that Aruba, in regard to text messages of an amorous nature that she had with Mr. Brian Higgins, who was at Waterfall, and also at the residence on 34 Fairview, because he was friends with his homeowner, Brian Allen. He was also friends with Mr. O'Keefe and had also met the defendant. And throughout the course of those amorous text messages, there's references that the defendant makes to that incident in Aruba, as she purported to be Mr. O'Keefe cheating on her. She insists that he was making out with Marietta Sullivan in that lobby as opposed to her giving him a hug. And makes repeated reference to that within the contents of those text messages as well. Now, you'll hear testimony from a number of different other individuals. Mr. Michael Trotta, who has a supervisory role with Canton Department of Public Works. You'll hear from Mr. Louis Jutras, who has a supervisory role with regard to IT, in regard to certain video that was recovered from the town of Canton, as well as from a temple located along the route that the defendant traveled, both away from Fairview that evening, as well as to Fairview from Waterfall, away from Fairview to Mr. O'Keefe's residence on Meadows, and then later in the morning at 5. If you recall, Ms. McCabe, I anticipate, will testify that she receives the call from the defendant about 4:53 in the morning. The defendant then drives around Canton for some perceptible half-hour or so period of time prior to even getting to Ms. McCabe's house. And what I submit the evidence, or what I anticipate the evidence will show, based on sort of the tracking of the phone records, testimony you'll hear from Lieutenant Brian Cullen of the State Police, from these bulky records and RTT accounts, that's the defendant, while she's using her phone, is driving in the direction of Fairview Road prior to going to Mrs. McCabe's house, where she meets Mrs. McCabe and Ms. Roberts. Now, again, you'll hear testimony from a number of different troopers who were involved in the investigation. With regard to this case, you'll hear from Mike Proctor. You'll hear some testimony from Trooper Joseph Hall.
Okay, I'm like, this is craziness. Welcome on in, CC. Happy to see you again. Certainly not telling a story for the jury. That is that is a fact, definitely a fact. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Yes, this is trial number 1. This is Lolly's opening statement. It is an atrocity. It is horrifying in every way. And you're so welcome, James. Yeah, I've been super busy, but I love it. The law firm's it's just been nuts. But I love every minute of it. And I have so many fun stories that we will go through and share through time. I've got some fun exhibits, if you will. So yes, lots of fun stories and lots of fun stuff to tell about that. But yeah, it's just been insane. And plus all the kids getting ready for their Christmas concerts. Actually, the reason why I'm able to stream tonight is because, a lot of my kids, they're not having lessons like tonight and tomorrow because they're like traveling for Christmas and whatnot. So I'm hoping to also be able to stream again tomorrow night. So we'll see if we can do it.
A specialized unit within the State Police called CARS for short, but essentially a collision analysis and reconstruction section within the Massachusetts State Police. His examination of the vehicle, his examination of the scene, his examination of specifically some Toyota Texture, because Lexus is essentially owned by Toyota or vice versa. So there is some data that he's able to recover from that and back the vehicle up based on its known locations and travel. he cycles and essentially opines, anticipating
Cycles.
around 12:45 in the morning when the vehicle was in front of the residence on Fairview. But for some perceptible period of time, that vehicle travels over 60 feet in reverse at over approximately 24.2 miles per hour. Now, you'll hear testimony, as I said, from a number of different troopers, as well as from a number of different analysts from different labs. Included within that is Ms. Maureen Hartnett, who collected items from the vehicle, the defendant's vehicle, including the taillights, sort of housing from that vehicle, pieces of the taillight that were discovered in sort of front grass, front street area. There is a specialized team called CERT team. You'll hear from Lieutenant Kevin O'Hara, who has a supervisory role in relation to that. And then later on that day, the 29th, he, along with Lieutenant Tully and a number of different members from his CERT team, were searching for evidence within the mounds of snow in front of that house, as the blizzard is still ongoing at this point, through sort of the afternoon hours. Among the items that they locate is a sneaker. And Mr. O'Keefe is transported to the hospital. He found only have one sneaker on his feet. They find the other sneaker in that area of the body. They find various pieces of taillight. And as is wont to do, over the course of the following days, temperatures rise, rainstorm that comes in, and the snow melts. Over those successive days, there are additional pieces of taillights that are eventually discovered in that area of the front wall of the street. Now, from these different pieces, Ms. Hartnett also locates a cocktail glass that's located on the bumper or the rear area of that scene, and she locates a human hair on the back of that defendant's vehicle as well. Now, the cocktail glass on the bumper, you also see surveillance video from the waterfall, and Mr. O'Keefe is observed on that surveillance video essentially walking out of the waterfall with a cocktail glass in his right hand. Same right hand that has minor injuries to it, and the same right hand that's attached to the right arm that has the abrasions and lacerations that are observed by the paramedics, that are observed by the doctors at Good Samaritan, and observed by the medical examiner as well. We'll hear testimony from another analyst, Christina Hanley, about the forensic consistency between the drinking glass that was in the defendant's bumper and the drinking glass pieces that were found on scene 34th Fairview. You'll hear her testimony in regard to pieces of red and clear plastic that were microscopic in size that were found within Mr. O'Keefe's clothing. Consistent, in her opinion, I anticipate she'll testify with the same pieces of plastic contained within the defendant's taillight. You'll hear from Ashley Ballard, who works for the lab as well, and how she fit various pieces of broken taillight from the scene together and over that taillight housing, finding them to be consistent with each other as well. You'll hear testimony from Andre Cordell, who does essentially DNA analysts for the lab. Samples that were DNA samples that were taken from the taillight, from the clothes of Mr. O'Keefe, the broken drinking glass that were consistent with Mr. O'Keefe. Those items were also sent, the taillight DNA was also sent from the Penn Lab, Bodie Technologies located in Northern Virginia. You'll hear from an analyst there, Mr. Nicholas Bradford, indicating that the DNA on the defendant's taillight, in his opinion, is consistent with that of Mr. O'Keefe and inconsistent with Trooper Proctor and Sergeant Buchanan, who were the two preliminary investigators and primary investigators in the case. You'll also hear from this test chart from that Bodie Laboratories in regard to some mitochondrial that she examined in regard to that hair that Ms. Hartnett found on the bumper of the car, and her opinion that it was consistent with that of Mr. O'Keefe as well. Lastly, you'll also hear from Dr. Irene Scortibello and Dr. Renee Stonebridge of the Office of Chief Medical Team in regard to their various examinations. Dr. Stonebridge is a neuropathologist who essentially examines brain findings. Dr. Irene Scortibello is a forensic pathologist who does the sort of autopsy and medical examination of Mr. O'Keefe's body. You'll hear about the variety of sort of injuries that she observed over Mr. O'Keefe's body. In particular, you'll hear testimony in regards to lacerations, like that. It's the testimony in regards to the initial sort of skull fracture that occurs at the back of his head, and then sort of a radiating skull fracture that goes throughout his skull, which then leads to subversion.
I just have to pause it because it's just so monotonous. So what's new is we've got the sidebars. So we're doing, for anyone who's just now getting geared, a la the origins of this channel as far as covering anything related to law, we are doing the entire trial gavel to gavel with all the sidebars. So we're doing that for the first trial, and we will do that for the second trial as well whenever those sidebars come out. So I don't know that anyone else is doing this on YouTube because most people are like reading the sidebars. But this is how we started out with Be Heard. So far we've had one sidebar, but we've got another sidebar that happens here at the end of opening statements, and there's plenty of sidebars. So we're going through the entire trial, and every time they go to sidebar and they cut the sound, we're going to read the sidebar. So we'll have the entire thing with full on context. And there's M. Kane Ultra. Woo! Happy to see you. Like they are on camera or reading. I'm not sure. I don't understand your question, Twiz. They're on camera or reading. I don't know what you mean.
Hemorrhage, or essentially bleeding on the brain and swelling of the brain, which then causes a condition called ecchymosis, which then sort of leads to the swelling of both Mr. O'Keefe's eyes and is observed by the initial response. You will hear various testimony about sort of issues in regard to the pancreas, how that's indicative of hypertension. Now, again, as I said, this is the first of two times that I have an opportunity to address you directly. I thank you very much for your attention today, and I thank you for your participation of your attention as we go through all of the witnesses and all the evidence. That second time that I do get to address you, what I'll be asking you is based on the evidence. Again, as the court has instructed you, you are the sole arbiters of the facts of this case. You are the ones who find what the facts, I reiterate that, the facts, and what the evidence demonstrates is. What I submit to you at that time, that second time, is that the only true and just verdict based on that is that the defendant Karen Reed is guilty of murder in the second degree, striking the victim Mr. O'Keefe with a car, knocking him back onto the ground, striking his head on the ground, causing bleeding in his brain, swelling, and then leaving him there for several hours in a blizzard, with temperatures in the teens, wind swirling around, snow piling up on his body until she comes
Finish
to Mrs.
already.
McCabe and Mrs. Roberts just after 6 a.m. And that she is also guilty of vehicular manslaughter, operating under the influence of liquor, and that she is also guilty of leaving the scene after causing death. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Now, let's not get it twisted. That applause is not for his opening statement. It's for the fact that he's done. Thank God. And now, for something completely different in every fucking possible way, this is the opening statement from Mr. Unetti that is the reason why I started following this trial, watching this trial, and because again, I was not interested until I heard this opening statement coming up in just.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lally. Mr. Unetti?
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court.
Let's do this. I'm so excited. Yes, gangster. This right here, guys.
Karen Reed was framed.
Yes.
The car never struck John O'Keefe. She did not cause his death. And that means that somebody else did. You will learn that it was no accident that John O'Keefe was found dead on the front lawn of 34 Fairview Road in Canton on January 29th of 2022.
Right? It's worth hearing again. And that's exactly what, like, literally, it's like the dude. You don't make a statement like that. Like you can tell, like, yeah, hearing that, it's like, okay, because that is not the type of thing you just say. And to start out like that, like the guts, man. Oh my God. Just, you know what it is? It's huge. Hold on. It's huge, huge, huge.
Balls.
Well, let me turn the volume up. It's huge.
Balls.
There we go. All right.
Karen Reed was framed. Her car never struck John O'Keefe. She did not cause his death. And that means that somebody else did. You will learn that it was no accident that John O'Keefe was found dead on the front lawn of 34 Fairview Road in Canton on January 29th of 2022. You will learn that at that address lived a well-known and well-connected law enforcement family in Canton, the Alberts. Because the Alberts were involved, and because they had close connections to the investigators in this case, Karen Reed was framed for a murder she did not commit. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. As I previously told you, my name is David Unetti. I'm an attorney with an office in Boston. Together with attorneys Alan Jackson and Elizabeth Little, it is truly my privilege and my honor to represent Karen Reed during this trial. From a very early juncture in this case, you will question the Commonwealth's theory of the case.
Okay. Also, I just want to say the jury just got finished with the most horrific opening statement of all time. Think about just the way they have, if you're on this jury and you don't have any concept of what an opening statement should be, and the way Lolly started out, basically apologizing. I'm going to attempt to lead you through the long list of witnesses, right? And navigate you through the murky waters of the long list of witnesses. He failed at that. And it was just unbelievably arduous, and none of it was necessary. The most boring, mundane, monotonous. And then you compare that to just how this was started with Karen Reed was framed. I mean, you couldn't have a more night and day, whatever, like crazy, right? The juxtaposition. The jury definitely woke up, I will say.
To represent Karen Reed during this trial. From a very early juncture in this case, you will question the Commonwealth's theory of the case.
Mm-hmm.
You will question the quality of the Commonwealth's evidence. You will question the veracity of the Commonwealth's witnesses. And you will question their shoddy and biased investigation, a faulty investigation that led to Karen Reed sitting here today. You will learn, in short, that the police did no real investigation of this case, and you will question why. You'll question why the investigators had such tunnel vision. You'll question why they focused solely on Karen Reed. someone with no ties to the Canton Police Department, as opposed to the well-known and well-connected Albert family of Canton, a family that was never treated as suspects by the investigators in this case. Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found mortally injured on Brian Albert's front lawn. His body was in full view and almost right below Brian Albert's bedroom window on his front lawn. He was found wearing only one sneaker. You'll learn that Brian Albert was a Boston police officer as well, and that he was a trained first responder. Brian Albert was notified that another police officer was injured and unresponsive on his front lawn, and Brian Albert did nothing. His sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, and other civilians were on his property that morning after John O'Keefe's body was found. Police, EMTs, firefighters, police cruisers, an ambulance, fire truck, lights flashing, and first responder Brian Albert never came out of his house. Equally important for you will be the fact that the lead homicide investigators never went inside the Albert home that night. You'll learn that Brian Albert's brother, Kevin Albert, is a Canton police officer. It was obvious very early on that the Canton police should not be investigating the death of a man found on the property of the brother of a Canton police officer. So it was decided just about from the start that the Massachusetts State Police should take complete control of this investigation because the Canton police were conflicted out. Now, that sounded good at the time, but you'll learn that two major problems arose. First, despite the fact that they obviously had a conflict of interest, the evidence will show that the Canton police still had their hands in this investigation. You will find it astounding. The Canton police officer, Kevin Albert, the reason for the conflict of interest in the first place, was continually updated about the status of this investigation while it was going on. Second,
about that.
and equally troubling, is that the lead state police detective who was assigned to this case was a man named Michael Proctor.
There it is.
Michael Proctor, you will learn, is one of the many people in Canton with deep ties to the Albert family. Michael Proctor's own mother refers to the Alberts as the Proctor's second family. His own sister's wedding, Michael Proctor was in the wedding party with Colin Albert, and he sat at the head table of that wedding with members of the Albert family. That's the man who was chosen to lead the investigation into the suspicious death on the property of Brian Albert.
So Kane's saying, didn't you watch this with us? We actually haven't watched these. When I covered the first trial, I jumped in like on, I don't remember which day, a couple days in. And so we haven't actually watched these together on this channel for this first trial. So yeah, it's a first.
The man who gave updates to Canton police officers.
It would be a first anyway, even if we had watched them, because it's a first with sidebars, but it's a first period. So.
Sir Kevin Albert, while the state police were supposed to be investigating what had occurred at his brother Brian Albert's house. You'll learn that right from the jump, Michael Proctor predetermined the outcome of this case. Never stepped foot inside the Albert home on January 29th, 2022. Never checked out whether there were any signs of struggle inside that home. He never called for crime scene technicians and other specialists to look for blood or other trace evidence within the home. He never asked Brian Albert for permission to go in the home and take a look around. Michael Proctor never applied for a search warrant to go in that home. Instead, he focused immediately and exclusively on Karen Reed, the outsider. You will learn that no one in the Proctor family has ever called the Reed family their second family. No one in the Proctor family had been in a wedding party with anyone from the Reed family. Karen Reed was a convenient outsider. She was most definitely not from Canton. How did Michael Proctor feel about her? How did he treat somebody he was investigating at a point in time when he should have been keeping an open mind, focusing on obtaining all possible evidence so that he didn't miss anything? Well, you will learn that on the very day that John O'Keefe was found dead on Brian Albert's lawn, Michael Proctor was texting with his high school buddies about this supposedly secret investigation using his personal cell phone. He was revealing information about this investigation to his friends, assuming that nobody would ever find out what he was doing or what he was saying. And he was revealing his true thoughts about Karen Reed to his friends, not what he put in his sanitized police reports, his true feelings to his friends whom he trusted and in text messages that he never thought would come into the hands
Oh, those
of the
text
defense. in this
messages,
case.
though.
Lead investigator, Trooper Michael Proctor, right from the start, called Karen Reed names you would reserve only for your worst enemies.
Yeah.
He told his friends that he hoped that she would kill herself. He told his friends that he had seized her cell phone. And you will learn that he knew he shouldn't have been accessing any content on her cell phone because he knew there would likely be attorney-client communications on between Karen and me at that time. He knew that he was supposed to wait for a search warrant or other permission from a judge in order to go through that phone. But you'll learn that he went through the phone anyway, without permission. And you'll know that he did because he told his high school buddies that he was searching her phone for nude photos of Karen Reed. And he was disappointed he hadn't found any yet. That is the professional and unbiased investigator who was chosen to lead the investigation into the death of John O'Keefe. You'll learn that one of Michael Proctor's high school friends commented to him that with a dead body on the front lawn, the homeowner in this case is surely going to catch a lot of grief. And you know what Michael Proctor's response to that was? One word. Nope. And he explained why. Michael Proctor assured his buddies that the homeowner would not catch a lot of grief because, quote, the homeowner's a Boston cop too, end quote. That one sentence, ladies and gentlemen, in Michael Proctor's own words, will explain a lot to you about how this investigation was conducted. You will be able to evaluate whether Trooper Michael Proctor treated Brian Albert and his family differently because of who they are and the relationships between his family and theirs. You will evaluate whether this investigation was on the up and up. You will decide, as a result, how valuable or worthless the prosecution's DNA evidence is or is not, in light of who controlled that evidence. You will learn that Michael Proctor's fingerprints are figuratively all over this case. His fingerprints are all over the Commonwealth's evidence. You will learn that Michael Proctor showed up at Karen Reed's parents' house in Dayton to interview her during the afternoon of January 29th, only hours after John O'Keefe's body was found dead on Brian Albert's front lawn. You'll learn that Michael Proctor had her Lexus SUV towed from her parents' home. But you'll also learn that he wrote a search warrant in which he falsified the time that he took that SUV. He swore under oath that the vehicle wasn't towed until 5:30 p.m. But you'll learn that we obtained surveillance footage that he didn't know we would get. And that surveillance footage exposed that Michael Proctor's words in that sworn affidavit were a lie. Michael Proctor had that vehicle for about 90 minutes before he claimed to have taken it. And folks, you will learn that the timing is important, very important. Because when John O'Keefe was first found on Brian Albert's front lawn, the police thoroughly searched that yard for potential evidence. And it wasn't just one officer, or two, or three. There were at least 4 officers that searched that front lawn. And that morning was the beginning of a snowstorm, but there wasn't yet much snow on the ground when they were searching.
I know.
It was light out by the time they did the search, and it was getting lighter. And during that thorough search of Brian Albert's front lawn, the number of pieces of taillight that were found by a minimum of 4 officers looking for evidence was 0. It was only later in the day when the snow was really starting to accumulate that the police miraculously started to find pieces of taillight on the property. The police only started to find pieces of taillight after Michael Proctor had seized Karen Reed's car. They started to find pieces of taillight after Michael Proctor had possession of her taillight. You'll learn that Trooper Michael Proctor then kept going back to the Albert residence after that day, and he claims to have kept finding pieces of taillight on multiple occasions on multiple different days. And in addition, a good week after John O'Keefe's death, Canton Police Chief Kenneth Berkowitz, an older officer on the brink of retirement with probably not the best eyesight. He supposedly was happened to be driving past Brian Albert's house. And by the way, Brian Albert is someone with whom Chief Berkowitz is also good friends. And this older man allegedly spotted yet another piece of taillight from his moving vehicle. This was yet another piece of taillight that was somehow missed by the trained specialists who had previously and thoroughly searched the property. Another piece of taillight that Proctor supposedly missed in the many times he went back to the property. Michael Proctor claims that he kept finding pieces of taillight right up until February 18th of 2022, which was nearly 3 weeks after John O'Keefe was found dead on Brian Albert's lawn. You will learn that there is no competent evidence that Karen Reed's taillight shattered at Brian Albert's property in the early morning hours of January 29th of 2022. To the contrary, you'll learn that when Karen left John at Brian Albert's house, she drove back to John's house on Meadows Ave across town in Canton. At John's home, where he lived with his 2 adopted children, Karen was drifting in and out of sleep, but she woke up for good in a panic sometime around 4 a.m. because John hadn't come home. And that was not like him at all. He had never done that before. Karen had a sinking feeling that something was wrong. Something was seriously wrong. So she got back into her Lexus and she backed up out of the garage to leave the driveway. And when she did, the right rear taillight of her Lexus struck John's parked vehicle in the driveway and her taillight cracked. That was the same taillight that the prosecution now claims was broken outside the Albert residence hours earlier at 12:30 a.m. But we have video evidence that the taillight was actually broken at 5 a.m., many hours after the prosecution needs that taillight to have been broken. There is, of course, no video of the taillight being broken at Brian Albert's house. You will eventually conclude that that's because the taillight was not broken there. Importantly, you will learn that there was an eyewitness who arrived at 34 Fairview after Karen got there with John O'Keefe in the early morning hours of January 29th. And that eyewitness, Brian Nagel, who's the brother of Julie Nagel, who was at the after-hours party that night. He had a clear view of Karen's SUV. Brian Nagel confirmed that there was no damage to her taillight at that time. Karen was sitting in the driver's seat with her hands at 10 and 2. And Ryan Nagel confirms that while Karen was inside the car, John O'Keefe was not. John O'Keefe was also not outside the car at that time. We'll ultimately conclude there's only one other place he could have been. Now, going back to that 5 a.m. video from John's driveway, you will see Karen back up her Lexus and strike John's car at about 5 a.m. when she was leaving John's house to go out to look for him. And you will know that she struck his car at 5 a.m. because you will watch that video closely. You will witness that the wheels and the hubcaps on John's car are jostled and moved by Karen's SUV. And you will conclude that that video depicts exactly when Karen's taillight was cracked, long after she dropped off John that night at 34 Fairview. And you will learn that part of the reason that Karen's Lexus hit John's car was that Karen was panicked at that time. Where is John? Why didn't he come home? What happened to him? And you will learn that she was racking her brain for what possibly could have happened. And like many of us.
Could I hit him? Could I have hit him? All that.
The worst. Did I hit him? Could I have hit him? That was what she was saying, both to herself and to other people later that morning when she went back to 34 Fairview. She couldn't think of anything else that made sense.
What do you mean,
She
Twig?
certainly didn't consider in a million years that someone from within the Albert home could have beaten up John and left him to die on the front lawn. Now, that was over 2 years ago. Karen didn't know then what you will learn during this trial. Karen didn't know that Brian Albert's sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, left the after-hours party at Brian Albert's house sometime after Karen pulled away. She didn't know that after Jennifer McCabe dropped off some people elsewhere, she returned to her own home. Karen didn't know that Jennifer McCabe climbed some stairs in her home and eventually made it into her bedroom with her cell phone. Karen didn't know that Jennifer McCabe settled in at 2:27 in the morning on January 29, 2022, and typed a Google search that she would later delete. 2:27 in the morning was over 3 hours before John O'Keefe's body was found on Brian Albert's lawn. 2:27 was over 3 hours before anyone knew or suspected that John O'Keefe was missing or hurt or in trouble. And at 2:27 in the morning, you will learn that with no one watching her, thinking she was alone with her thoughts, and not worrying that anyone would know what she was doing, Jennifer McCabe typed in the following Google search: how long to die in the cold? Now, she misspelled the first word, so the actual search was how long to die in the cold, but you'll get the point. You will ask yourself, why would somebody Google how long does it take for someone to die in the cold? Unless that person knew someone who either was in that situation or would be in that situation. You will question during this trial, who was it who actually did die in the cold at some point that night, sometime after Jen McCabe was asking Google for an answer to her question. And you'll learn that the answer to that question was John O'Keefe. The medical examiner in this case will testify that one of the causes of John O'Keefe's death was hypothermia. John O'Keefe died in part because he was left to die in the cold. Now, the Commonwealth will try to dispute the timing of that Google search. They'll try to claim that there were only 2 Google searches at 6:23 and 6:24 a.m. after John's body was found. But one problem for the Commonwealth will be that we have retained Richard Green, one of the leading computer forensic experts in the country. Rick Green has forensically analyzed Jennifer McCabe's phone, both manually and using every appropriate type of computer software to solve this issue. Rick Green will confirm for you that Jennifer McCabe did indeed make that search at 2:27 a.m. And another problem for the Commonwealth is that you will hear and see other evidence that will confirm that Jennifer McCabe is lying when she denies making that Google search at 2:27 a.m. You will conclude that before she went to bed, if she went to bed that night, Jennifer McCabe wanted to know just how long it would take for someone to die in the cold.
Just
And a
how
big question in this trial for you will be, when was John O'Keefe left to die in the cold? I expect the Commonwealth will try to persuade you that he was left there sometime around 12:30 a.m. because they're going to try to prove to you that Karen Reed hit him and that his body stayed there the entire night until first responders arrived at 6 a.m. and his body was taken to the hospital. But you will learn that there are big problems with the Commonwealth's theory of this case. You will learn that there were 6 people at that after-hours party at Brian Albert's house, all of whom left by the front door and would have been confronted by John O'Keefe's lifeless body on that lawn if he was actually there at that time. Those 6 people walked out the front door to 34 Fairview, walked to their cars, either in the driveway or parked in front of the house. Brian Albert's sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, was there. Her husband, Matthew McCabe, was there. ATF federal agent Brian Higgins was there, who was also Brian Albert's friend. Sarah Levinson, a friend of Brian Albert Jr., was there. Julie Nagel, another friend of Brian Albert Jr., was there. And Caitlin Albert, Brian Albert's daughter, was also there. All of them leaving the residence. Each of those people left 34 Fairview in Canton, where Brian Albert lived. Each of them walked out facing the front lawn, where the Commonwealth will tell you that a 6'2", nearly 220-pound big man in dark clothing was sprawled on the front lawn when there was only a dusting of white snow on the ground. He was supposedly sprawled on that lawn, just feet from where these people were walking when they left the residence. And you will learn that not one of these people saw John O'Keefe laying. Not one. And you know who else saw no one laying outside in the early morning hours of January 29th? The snowplow driver in charge of plowing the street for the city of Canton. And this is another big problem for the Commonwealth. You will learn that Michael Proctor, here's that name again, wrote a report where he claimed that the DPW supervisor had told him that Fairview Road had not been plowed that night. Proctor's total investigation on this issue consisted of one phone call and no follow-up. He just submitted his report that simply said the road hadn't been plowed that night, perhaps thinking that no one else would follow up either. But you'll learn that when it came to finding out the truth, it's not that Proctor couldn't find the truth, it's that he wouldn't. But fortunately, you'll learn that we would, and we did. You'll learn that within weeks after January 29th, we sent our investigator, a former Medford police officer named Paul Makowski, to the Canton DPW to try to get to the bottom of this. Paul Makowski talked to the same supervisor at the DPW, a man named Michael Trotta, whom Proctor claimed had told him that the street hadn't been plowed that night. You'll learn that Paul Makowski found out that Michael Proctor was not telling the truth. You'll learn that Michael Trotta from the DPW told Paul Makowski, our investigator, that the street was indeed plowed that night, and that the name of the plow driver was Brian Loughran. So Paul Makowski tracked down Brian Loughran. He asked Mr. Loughran if the state police or any investigators had ever spoken to him. And the answer came back, no. You will then learn what Brian Loughran had to say about what he saw and didn't see that night, and you will be shocked. Brian Loughran told Paul Makowski that he was driving a big snowplow in Canton that night. You'll learn that the nickname for it at the DPW was Frankenstein, because it had a lot of spare parts and it had been around forever. Brian Loughran told Paul Makowski that when he plows the streets of Canton in Frankenstein, he's very careful. He makes sure to check not only the roads in front of him, but also the yards to the side of his plow. He makes sure not to hit a fire hydrant or a tree or an animal, or heaven forbid, a person lying in the snow. He's always on the lookout. You'll learn that Brian Lawford passed by 34 Fairview in his plow, traveling right by Brian Albert's front lawn at 2:30 in the morning. You'll learn that Brian Lawford confirms that at about 2:30, when he went by that house, John O'Keefe was not on that front lawn. So you'll learn that about 2 hours after the Commonwealth claims that Karen Reed somehow incapacitated John O'Keefe, an eyewitness confirms that not only could it not have happened, but it didn't happen. But you'll learn that Brian Lawford also provides some other troubling testimony for the Commonwealth. You'll learn that after making that pass at 2:30 in the morning and seeing no body, he showed up again at the entrance to Fairview Road, intending to make another pass down it with his plow. This time, however, at about 3:30 in the morning, he looked down the street and he saw that parked right next to Brian Albert's front lawn, right in the very area where John O'Keefe's body was later found at 6 a.m., Brian Lawford saw a Ford Edge parked on the side of the road. You will learn that the police have done zero investigation to discover whose Ford Edge that was. You'll learn that members of the Albert family drove Ford Edges. You'll learn that the police to this day claim not to know who was parked right next to the area where John O'Keefe's body was later found. You will learn that while investigators on this case, including Michael Proctor, completely ignored the snowplow driver who went right by the Albert residence, the defense not only tracked him down and interviewed him, but the plow driver actually took our investigator on a ride back past the residence to explain the precise route that he had taken on January 29th. You'll learn that some other curious things were going on in the early morning hours of January 29th. Curious things that the police in this case utterly failed to investigate. For example, after people left the after-hours party at Brian Albert's house on January 29th, Brian Albert claimed that he had no contact with anyone but his wife until he was woken up in the morning. But you will learn that he was ultimately confronted by the fact that his phone records revealed that he had actually placed a phone call to ATF agent Brian Higgins, his friend, the same friend who had been at his house earlier that night. And that was at 2:22 in the morning. You'll learn that Brian Higgins called him back 17 seconds later, and they connected for 22 seconds on their cell phones. You'll be asked to consider just how long 22 seconds is and what could be said and discussed during that long of a phone call.
Wait, I have a response to that. Hold on. Where is it? Where is it? Hold on. Just toss long. Just toss long is 22 seconds, guys.
That call is actually from Brian Higgins to you, isn't it?
Yes.
Obviously, you know how long 22 seconds is.
What's that?
You know how long 22 seconds lasts.
Yes.
Perfect.
You will consider that phone call in the context of the other curious things that were going on during the early morning hours of January 29th. You will learn about the following in chronological order. 2:12 a.m., Jennifer McCabe arrives at her home. 2:22 a.m., Brian Albert calls Brian Higgins. 2:22 a.m., 17 seconds later, Higgins calls him back. And Brian Albert and Brian Higgins are on the phone together for 22 seconds. 2:23 a.m., Jennifer McCabe climbs the stairs to her bedroom. 2:27 a.m., Jennifer McCabe searches on Google, along to die in the cold. 2:30 a.m., plow driver Brian Lawford confirms there was no body on Brian Albert's front lawn. 3:30 a.m., Brian Lawford confirms that a Ford Edge was parked right where John O'Keefe's body was later found. The Commonwealth will not be able to successfully dispute any of those facts, yet I expect that they will persist in asking me to convict Karen Reed anyway. You will learn that there are other major problems with the Commonwealth's theory. You'll learn that when John O'Keefe was found, he did not look like he had been hit by a car. You'll learn that he looked to have been attacked and beaten up. You'll learn that John O'Keefe was a large 6'2" man who, if positioned behind a Lexus SUV, would have had his torso completely exposed to the rear of that vehicle, including to the taillight. You'll learn that no part of his torso was injured. There was no bruising, no ridges, no scratches, no punctures. You'll learn that his chest and hips and legs were pristine, despite the Commonwealth's contention that he was hit by a 6,000-pound vehicle. The evidence will show that what was not pristine was his right arm. You will take one look at that arm, and you will conclude that a car did not cause those injuries. The injuries to John O'Keefe's arm appear to be consistent with scratch marks and claw marks, marks that make it look as though an animal had attacked his arm. But you won't have to rely just on your common sense when you look at those photos. You'll hear from an expert forensic pathologist who is world-renowned, who has personally conducted thousands of autopsies. And he will testify that those marks are consistent with scratch and claw marks and bite marks from an animal, including a German Shepherd. You'll learn that on January 29th of 2022, Brian Albert's family dog, Chloe, was a German Shepherd. You'll learn that Brian Albert has admitted that this dog is not good around strangers. You'll learn that on January 29th of 2022, John O'Keefe would have been a stranger to that dog. And you'll learn that Chloe had been the beloved family dog for the Alberts for 7 years. The Albert family loved Chloe. But strangely, as we discussed this dog today, the Albert family doesn't have its beloved Chloe anymore. You'll learn that Brian Albert was called to testify before the grand jury regarding this matter in April of 2022, and that he did testify about his German Shepherd, Chloe, during that grand jury testimony. And you'll learn that not long after that testimony, Brian Albert and his family rehomed their beloved family dog. They gave away their family dog, and Chloe, the German Shepherd, is therefore now gone. Now, the Commonwealth will try to take your attention away from all of these troubling facts and try to persuade you not to consider their shocking lack of investigation of anyone else, not to consider John O'Keefe's injuries, not to consider the fact that multiple people left the residence and saw no body, not to consider the fact that the snowplow driver was specifically looking at 2:30 a.m. and there was nobody there, not to consider the fact that 2 people in the house were communicating at 2:22 a.m. but denied speaking to each other for 22 seconds, and not to consider the fact that one of their witnesses, who was also present at the home, was unusually curious at 2:27 a.m. about how long it would take for someone to die in the cold. Commonwealth will instead try to persuade you that Karen Reed supposedly had a motive to kill John O'Keefe because they were not getting along. You'll hear about their trip to Aruba over New Year's Eve and that Karen was upset that John had been flirting with another woman. And you will hear that Karen considered exploring her options after that trip, which led her to a get-together at one point with ATF federal agent Brian Higgins, although that never went anywhere. But you'll also hear that in January of 2022, after the Aruba trip, and not long before January 28th and 29th, John O'Keefe was making long-term plans with Karen, including a family trip with her and the kids, and also another trip with Karen and another couple for months into the future. And you'll see video of how John and Karen were interacting on the night in question. You'll see for yourself how they looked at each other on the video at the Waterfall that night. Nobody who saw them that night saw anything wrong. There was nothing wrong. I mean, like any couples, occasionally they would bicker or disagree, but you will hear zero evidence of any domestic violence in that home whatsoever. John never raised a hand in anger toward Karen, and Karen never raised a hand in anger toward John. That simply wasn't who they are. You will conclude the notion that Karen Reed chose the start of a snowstorm to suddenly become violent out of the blue for the first time and intentionally kill her boyfriend by hitting him with her car and leaving him there with a house full of people inside is patently ridiculous. You will also learn that what's not ridiculous is that someone, not Karen Reed, ambushed John O'Keefe. Somebody probably didn't mean to kill him, but somebody went too far. You'll learn that Trooper Proctor failed to investigate motives that other people had to harm John O'Keefe. You'll learn that Proctor failed to investigate anything or anyone who was in the Albert residence that night. You'll learn that he failed to investigate the antagonistic relationship between members of the Albert family and John O'Keefe. You'll learn that apparently nobody investigates the Albert family of Canton. Remember, on day one, Trooper Proctor was asked whether the homeowner, Brian Albert, would catch a lot of grief. And Trooper Proctor himself said it. Nope. Homeowner is a Boston cop too. So folks, the trial is now about to start and the witnesses are about to start testifying. On behalf of Karen Reed, I ask that you do 2 things during this trial. First, I ask that you pay attention to all of the evidence. The way trials work, the prosecution gets to present its case first. They conduct their direct examinations first. So we respectfully ask that you wait for us. We will get to cross-examine their witnesses, and you will find that cross-examination is the key that unlocks the truth. Wait for us. You'll be glad that you did. Second, I ask that you keep your eye on the ball. You have one job and one job only to do during this trial. And that job, quite frankly, is not to solve
another
this case.
memorable.
Your only job during this trial is to determine whether the Commonwealth, the prosecution, has proven to you each and every element of the crimes they have charged, beyond a reasonable doubt, to a moral certainty. The prosecution will fail to prove this case to a moral certainty. They will fail to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. You will reasonably doubt their case because their theory of the case does not make sense.
I liked that one. That was clever. You will reasonably doubt their case.
You will reasonably doubt their case because Karen Reed was framed, and the evidence shows that, despite the fact that the police never ever investigated that angle of this case at all. Because the prosecution will not prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty, we will stand before you again at the end of this trial and ask that you find Karen Reed not guilty.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Giannetti.
Or maybe push it at sidebar?
Yes.
Here it is. Bravo. All right. Now, guys, just like that, we're on to sidebar number 2. Oh, and we need a sidebar song. Okay. So the sidebar, oh my God, the holiday sidebar. So let's see. Have yourself a merry little sidebar. What else have we got? Let's see here. Sidebars roasting on an open fire. I don't know. I feel like I'm so out of practice with the holiday sidebar songs. I don't even remember. We went through like 50,000 of them during Debt Be Heard. What else? Let's see. Goodness. Oh, the sidebars outside are frightful. Okay, here we go. There it is. So as soon as he's done, we have Miss McLaughlin. Your Honor, may we approach you at sidebar, the court, Judge Bev? Yes, jurors, when we come to a sidebar, please feel free to stand up and stretch. Whereupon there was a sidebar conference as follows. Yeah, brilliant there, actually. Proctor. Yeah, Proctor roasting on an open fire. Brilliant. Okay, so then Miss McLaughlin. All right. Your Honor, the Commonwealth would object to defense counsel's opening. Contrary to rulings of this court, they opened with suggestions of a third-party culprit. Twice, defense counsel represented that Karen Reed was framed and that she was ambushed. They never said ambushed, and that someone else did it. The Commonwealth would like to object, given the ruling of this court that there would be no third-party culprit claims within the openings. The court, well, what do you want me to say? Just say openings are not evidence? I remind you, openings are not evidence. The clerk, sorry, one of the jurors needs to go to the bathroom. The court, yes, we are going to take a recess. Jurors, why don't we take a, I'm going to try to say it like Judge Bev, right? Jurors, why don't we take a 15-minute recess? Yeah, that's a good point, right? That John O'Keefe was ambushed, not Karen. Right. So that was a misrepresentation by Miss McLaughlin. So upon the jury exits, and then the sidebar conference continues. Judge Bev, this is probably a good time to continue this. Miss McLaughlin, yes. So if you could note the Commonwealth's objection and give a limiting instruction reminding the jurors that openings are not evidence. The court, okay, Mr. Giannetti, and then Mr. Giannetti. So I don't think that I did anything improper. I think I couched it in terms of the lack of investigation that they did and that I did not name any third-party culprit at all. But I have no objection to the court's solution. The court, okay, you did a decent job, but there were a couple of times that you pushed it. All right, I will instruct them when they come back. What was I going to say? Or what I was going to say is we'll take a 15-minute recess. Who is your witness? Do you have more than one for now until 1 o'clock, or do you have just one? Mr. Lawley, probably just one. The court, okay, and that is Paul O'Keefe. All right, we will take a 15-minute recess. All right, thank you. And then that's basically the end of that sidebar. I do have a banner that we're going to be using for these, which is, let's see, showing the we're keeping score here. So for some sidebars, right, there's going to be a definite winner and loser, right? For depending on whoever is objecting to something or what have you. I would say on this one, I don't know, what do you guys think? Is it a tie? Because basically, you know, Miss McLaughlin's asking for that instruction, which that instruction is par for the course, right? That's not like, I don't know. I guess I would probably call this one a tie. because Unetti's fine with it. I would be fine with it. Yeah. Closing arguments opening statements are not evidence, right? And she's going to be giving that instruction after they take the break, which the reason I like that is because they're going to take the break and then she's going to give that instruction. So by separating that out, and it's not like she did this on purpose, right? Because a juror had to use the bathroom, but it works out so that by having those separated, so Unetti finishes, they go to sidebar instead of like coming right back immediately and then giving that instruction, which some jurors might catch on and be like, oh, she gave that instruction because the defense did something naughty, right? There's going to be a 15-minute recess and then they're going to come back and then she's going to give that instruction. So I think at that point, if you're a juror, that could apply to the entirety of what you just heard. So I would probably call it a tie. What do you guys think? Kind of neutral, but the Commonwealth won that one. I mean, I don't know, but the thing is like the defense didn't object to that, right? Like they were fine with that solution. If the defense was like, I guess if you're really thinking about it, it's like if the defense was like, no, I object. I don't think that you should be giving that instruction. I mean, I guess we could go with like 1 and then 0.5, like 1.5. So let me see here. Like 1 for the Commonwealth and like 0.5 for the defense, maybe. Is that fair? That might be more fair. What do you guys think? Right. Twiz is agreeing with me. He says, hard to say the defense lost when he said he was okay with it. Right. Exactly. Because that's sort of how it normally would go, right? One party's going to move for something. They want X, Y, and Z. And the other side will normally be like, no, I object, right? Or whatever. And then, but he was fine. Yeah, I sort of agree with that. Okay. Or they cancel each other out. Okay. So we'll just go with a tie then. We're gonna make this a tie. I think that's fair. So we'll just go, and so they basically cancel each other out. So we'll just go 1-1. How about that versus 0-0? That way we can actually have, because it's the same, the same anyway, but like now we've got some numbers on the board for that. So, okay. So they're going to call Paul O'Keefe, and I'll be honest, guys. I mean, I probably, if I watched, I mean, I would imagine I watched his testimony, but I probably kind of breezed through it. So again, this is kind of a first for me. And we didn't watch this as a channel because I didn't start covering this until I think it was during Gallagher with the snowblower and stuff is when I started actually covering this trial the first time around. So this will be Paul O'Keefe here. And I guess they take a little break. There's the only fan. Look at her go. So we'll just skip ahead to Paul O'Keefe. All righty, here we go.
Anytime you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Interestingly, right, that he didn't testify in the second trial.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Would you?
All right, I'll have to pause this real quick. Too Fast is asking if I still love my job. I assume he's referencing being. I adore it. I don't have enough words. I could go on and on and on, and to completely derail this entire live stream if I start talking about how much, and not even just how much I love it, but like so many eventful things have happened that are really, great stories for you guys, including just testaments to how amazing these two defense attorneys are. And I just it's not work because I go there when I don't have to be there because I love it. Like it could absolutely couldn't be happier. I don't know how I got so lucky. Two of the coolest people on the planet. Actually, real quick though, I will do this. I did mean to do this. So I'm glad you mentioned it. Too Fast. I was going to show you guys what the so the building where I work, I was going to show you all what it looks like right now because it's all decorated. So let me see here. I meant to do this anyway. So this is perfect because this is not going to be lengthy story time. But basically, so the building that I work is a 7-story building. We're on the 3rd floor, but I've talked about how much I love this building because there's like all the natural light and like lots of windows and stuff. And so, so basically I took this picture from the 2nd floor. So you can see there, that's the front of the building. And then that's from the 1st floor. And then this is another view from the 2nd floor. Isn't it nice? Super classy. It's just a really nice, the building has great vibes and our office has great vibes. And it's just a really awesome place to be. Absolutely love it. I know, isn't it nice? The sunburst design in the window. Yeah, it's really cool. It's a really classy building. It's like pretty well known in the area. It's called the Knollwood. That's right. They had Mama O'Keefe Trust. Right. That's right. I forgot she didn't testify in the first trial. Yeah, that's true. If people shouldn't know. Oh no, everybody knows. I want people, I mean, people should know. I know it's been a while since I've seen you too fast. It might have been, initially I had a surprise and maybe word was getting out, but I hadn't made an official announcement. I'm not sure when the last time I saw you was, but yeah, no, I mean, I've been talking about, I'm giving updates sort of as far as my, working at the law firm goes. So yeah, no, you're all good. I appreciate your being thoughtful on that though. But yeah, so that's the law firm. And well, there's also another funny thing with the Squinguin. Where is that? Hold on. Let me see here. So, okay. Hang on. Let's just do this real quick. All right. So, okay. So one day I was at work. Let's just do this too real quick. So one day I was at work and this stupid Copilot AI thing popped up, and I don't use AI, but I was like, what the heck? And so, y'all know the Squinguin, obviously, right? So it was like, it forced me to respond. So I typed in, you can see it here, penguin and squirrel hybrid animal. And this is what it came up with. And then it said, here's a unique hybrid animal combining a penguin and a squirrel. Let me know, blah, blah, as you can see here, right? And I was like, that's creepy looking. And yeah. So then I was like, I gave it another command and I was like, make it hold a pineapple. And so this is what it came up with. As you can see, I said, literally, make it hold a pineapple. And then it says, here's your penguin squirrel hybrid holding a pineapple. Want to da-da-da-da. And I was like, this is terrible. So then I responded back and I was like, make it realistic or make it real. And what's funny is it's facing the same direction as the OG Squinguin, right? I was like, make it, look realistic or whatever. And then it popped out this. So what's really funny is so I did something to be funny, basically. I'm going to have to find where I've got the pictures of it. Basically, I'll have to find where I have the pictures of it. But what I did was I printed this off and I laminated it because we got a little laminating machine. And then on the wall of my office, oh my God, where are those pictures? I'll look for the pictures when we get into the next testimony. But well, yeah. So I basically, I put this on the wall and I was curious to see how long it would take for my defense attorneys to notice it and be like, what is that? So I'll find those pictures and then we'll finish the rest of that story. But basically, this is the AI version, right, of our OG Squinguin. So what do you guys think? How does it compare? Let me zoom in a little bit. This is a picture I took of the actual picture that was laminated. That's why you can kind of see the reflection there. So yeah, I still like the OG one better. Okay. Well, I have to do it this way so we'll have sound. Okay, here we go.
State your name and spell your last name.
Paul O'Keefe, last name O''K''E''E''F''E.
And where do you live, sir?
I live in West Bridgewater, Massachusetts.
And how long have you lived there?
10 years.
And who, if anyone, do you live there with?
My wife, Erin, our 2 children.
And how old are your children?
13 and 10.
And both daughters, is that correct?
Correct.
And how long have you and your wife been
together? Together, 24 years total. Married for 17 almost.
And what is your wife's name?
Erin.
And where did you grow up?
Braintree, Massachusetts.
And what are your parents' names?
My father is John, mother is Margaret.
And did you have any siblings?
2, yes. My sister Kristen. Excuse me, brother John.
And what was sort of the order in age as far as the siblings?
My sister was the oldest. My brother was the middle. I'm the youngest, so my sister was 5 years older than me, and my brother was 3.5 years older than me.
And do you work, sir?
I do.
What do you do for work?
I'm in sales for a company, Simmons Industries, which is a manufacturer of plumbing products.
How long have you been doing that?
12 years now.
Does your wife work as well?
She does.
What does she do?
She's in marketing. She works for a mechanical contractor out of Randolph.
And about how long has she been doing that?
She's been with her company for a year and a half now. Before that, she had a job working out of Boston for about 13 years.
And your brother John. Call him John, or was there other, like a nickname or anything else that you referred to him?
I mean, we all called him Johnny, especially if you're family.
And what did Johnny do for?
Boston Police.
How long was he a member of the Boston Police?
16 years.
And within the Boston Police, where specifically did he sort of work?
He started in Hyde Park, Mattapan area, which I believe is E18, and transferred over to Dorchester, which is C11, and then downtown Boston in the SOAR unit, which is the sex offender registry unit.
And when was it about that he started with the sex offender registry?
So after my sister had passed away in 2013, her husband passed away 2 months after that. My brother, he took on responsibility of raising our niece and nephew. And so the Boston Police, to ensure that he was safe and protected, moved him to that unit in 2014.
And sorry, but your sister passed away in 2013, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes,
and
we know.
how much time was it between the time that she received the diagnosis?
5.5 months.
And so you mentioned that you had brother-in-law, Kristen's husband. Is that correct?
Correct, Stephen Furbush, yes.
And when was it that he passed in relation to you?
2 months later, which was January 12th, 2014.
And and by they, I mean Kristen and Stephen Furbush, they had two children, is that correct?
Yes, 2 children, Kaylee and Patrick.
Which one is old?
Kaylee's the older, Patrick's a couple years younger than her, about 3 years.
How old are they now?
Kaylee is 16 and Patrick is 13.
And you mentioned, so initially when your sister Kristen passed away, the family's plan as far as Kaylee and Patrick were concerned.
Can you repeat that?
So initially when your sister Kristen passed away and her husband Stephen was still alive, what was sort of the initial plan as far as with reference to the children?
We were kind of in scramble mode to figure out, how we were going to move forward. My wife and I had talked about having the kids come live with us. We had 2 small children at the time. 3 and 8 months were my children. We didn't have a large enough house to take on.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and just finish this, close out the loop, if you will, on okay, here we go. So as far as this was the funny joke that I played or whatever. Okay, so here we go. So here's my office. So here's my office, and look at how cute. There's a baby picture of Frodo there. Here's my office. So this was what was so funny, right? So like I printed this off and laminated it, and so here's this huge wall. And I just basically put that there, like, just to see, like, how long would it take them to notice it? And then how would they react? So there's a zoomed out version where you can see for perspective's sake. And then here's a closer up. And then here's a closer up. Wait, can you guys see it? Hold on. I didn't share it the right way. Hold on. Let me do this again. Hold on. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, the zoomed out version, right? Okay, there we go. And then more closer up version so you can see. And then there it is. But what's so funny is like just you can really get the perspective here in terms of this huge wall and then that picture. And so it's still there, of course, right? And then whenever people, like if there's clients and stuff that come in and if they ever come into my office for something, I always I'll be like in the middle of doing whatever with their paperwork and stuff, and I'll just sort of gesture over to the wall and be like, "What do you guys think that is over there?" Just because it's just a fun little it's just fun. And speaking of fun, we had some Russian clients coming in the other day. I heard them out in the lobby, like I was just doing all kinds of stuff, and these clients were sitting out in the lobby, and then I heard Dillet, and I was like, Tugo Ruski, like I was like, oh my God, they're speaking Russian. And like, they are Ukrainians, right? But they moved to the US and like, of course, in Ukraine, your first language is Russian. So that was super fun. The other day I got to speak Russian to some peeps. And it's been the running joke in the office. Cause like my Spanish is terrible and it's useless. Cause I haven't spoken it since like high school, basically. So like, because people will call up and be like, do you speak Spanish? It's like, no, like useless there, right? But it's like, hey, like if you got Russian, if there's like Russian people, like I got you on the Russian, but it's like, it was like the running joke, like that's never going to become applicable or whatever. And so it's just funny that, the other day we had some Russian clients. Now they didn't need translation or anything because they speak English, but anyway, it was probably as close as I'm going to get. So yeah, so that's the office these days, my office. But just this piglet here on the left, though, this baby piglet. I mean, what a little baby piglet. So, Hosslong to notice the Squinguin. I was really disappointed because they noticed immediately, like literally immediately. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't even have a chance to try to like stifle my laughter. Both of them came in at separate times and immediately noticed it. And I was like, God, they're too smart, right? And that's the thing. Steam of truth, right? I know. Oh, no, it's a brief one. So there it is. The AI Squinguin. So, okay. Before we derail too much, we're going to go back to the testimony. I just have to unshare, reshare because of the way StreamYard does it. Okay. Because like the audio is messed up if you don't share these a certain way. All right, cool. Got it. We closed the loop on the AI Squinguin. Cool.
2 other children. So my brother stepped in, moved into the house in Canton and raised them for 8 years.
And so around the time of 2013, your sister Kristen and her husband Stephen's children, about how old were they at this time that Johnny sort of took over?
Kaylee was 6, Patrick was 3.
Now, when your brother Johnny what if any sort of legal relationship did he have to your niece and nephew, Kaylee?
He was made a legal guardian.
And where did he move from, and where did he move to when he assumed that role?
So he was living in Dorchester in a condo. He was living by himself, so he pretty much moved into my sister and brother-in-law's house in Canton. Lived there for, I want to say, 4 years until sold the house and bought a different house, which is also located in Canton.
Now, the initial house that your sister Kristen and her husband Stephen lived in with Kaylee and Patrick, about how long had they been living there before your brother Johnny moved in?
They were probably there for 5 or 6 years.
Prior to that, where had your sister Kristen and either of the children lived prior to moving into that house?
Yeah, so they, Kristen and Steve actually moved in with Johnny in Dorchester when Kaylee was just a baby. Lived with him for approximately a year before they bought their home in Canton.
Now, you mentioned that at some point your brother bought a second house in Canton and moved in there with the kids. Is that right?
Correct.
Around what time was that?
I want to say 2017 or 2018 timeframe.
And they lived there up and through for January 28th, 29th of 2022. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, around that particular time of January 2022, about how often did you see your brother Johnny and kids killing that?
I would say probably every other week, twice a month.
And your brother in particular, how often would you communicate with him during that time?
Communicate regularly, mostly through text messaging, a couple days a week, I would say.
Now, over the course of time, it's about 8 years or so that Johnny had sort of custody of Kaylee and Patrick, correct?
Correct.
And over that course of time, about how many relationships, and let me phrase this question first. About how many long-term relationships did your brother Johnny have with women over the course of that time? And before you get to that, if I could just ask you what your definition of long-term relationship is.
Long-term relationship is, over a year.
And so how many of those types of dating relationships that lasted for at least a year did your brother have during that time that you had kids?
2.
And who were those 2 individuals?
Amy Fortney and Karen Reed.
And this other individual, Amy, when about was it that your brother dated her?
2016, 2017 timeframe, I think.
Mom?
And did this other woman that he dated named Amy, did she have children of her own?
Yeah, she had 2 sons.
What about the
Now,
Bell
you mentioned 2, so other than Amy, who was the other one?
Her 2 sons' names are Gabriel and Christian.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In reference to, you mentioned 2 women that your brother had dated for a long-term period, correct?
Yes, correct.
And one of them was the woman, Amy, that you were just speaking about, correct?
Correct.
And who was the second one?
Karen Reed.
And is Karen Reed someone that you had met through the course of your brother dating her?
Yes.
So clear up the record, do you see Ms. Reed in the courtroom today? You identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's
Yep, she is seated right there between Mr. Giannetti and Mr. Jackson.
That's the record reflect identification of the defendant by the witness. No
Yeah.
objection.
Yes.
Now, Mr. O'Keefe, when was it that you first met Karen?
I believe it was Mother's Day, so maybe May of 2020.
Now, prior to that, were you aware of any other time when Miss Reed and your brother Johnny had dated in the past?
They dated very briefly in 2004.
And had you had occasion to meet her during that brief period where they dated in 2004?
I did not meet her back then, no.
And so the first time you met her would have been sometime in the spring of 2020, correct?
Correct.
And what was your understanding as far as when they had reconnected or gotten back together in reference to when you met her?
They reconnected. I believe my brother reached out to her in March of 2020, right at the beginning of COVID. I think he reached out to her via Facebook Messenger and then, text.
And they resumed some kind of relationship, and you had occasion to meet or see Karen Reed over the course of hanging out with your brother at various occasions, correct?
Correct, yep.
Now, about how often would you see Miss Reed? Would it be the same, more or less than when you saw your brother?
Almost the same, maybe a little less. If my brother was just him and I or his friends, but for the most part, he was with Karen.
And as far as your understanding, what was sort of the living arrangements with regard to Miss Reed and your brother?
She has her own home in Mansfield, Massachusetts. She would stay at my brother's house in Canton, I would say 3, maybe 4 nights a week.
And that would be at your brother's house with both he and your niece and nephew?
Correct.
Now, with regard to, you mentioned that they reconnected sometime around the COVID-19 pandemic, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And with regard to your brother and defendant Ms. Reed and the children, what was sort of going on as far as school and work with regard to the pandemic, with regard to each individual?
So that was a period of time when schools were closed and kids had to do remote learning. So Kelly and Patrick were both at home, remote learning, and my brother didn't have a job where he can work remote, so he had to go into the office. And most of the time, Karen would be at home
It's
with the
a
kids
lot
during
of
the day
exposition.
while she works
I
remotely.
understand it, but not
Now,
much
you
of it.
mentioned earlier that your brother had a legal guardianship role with regard to the children, correct?
Correct, yes.
What, if any, legal status
What, if
or role
any?
did the
Oh,
defendant
man.
have with regard to the children?
She didn't have any.
Now, with regard to your brother and the defendant's relationship, what, if any, conversations did you have with your brother in regard to the status of their relationship or any issues in the relationship?
He didn't say too much. If they were arguing, he might, give reference that they were arguing. Didn't really tell me what they were arguing about, but mostly kept that stuff to himself.
What, if anything, did he mention to you as far as reasons for an argument or sort of points of contention?
He didn't like, if she would spend a lot of money on the kids for gifts, or, I know there was some arguments over, what she fed them, whether it's, Dunkin' Donuts or whatnot, but those things along those lines.
Now,
I mean, you have to imagine, right? Like, so, okay, the Commonwealth's trying to lay out this thing of like, there was this argument and it was like bad enough to warrant death, right? Imagine if you're on the jury and it's like, what you would be expecting when the Commonwealth asks this question, if the Commonwealth's going to bother to ask the question of like, yeah, so like, what was this recent argument? Because, this comes up a lot in this first trial, like the most recent argument or the one that was in closest in time, right, to his death. And it's like, you would be expecting it to be something earth shattering, right? Like one of them had like, been cheating, or somebody had like stolen the other person's whatever, like a major thing, right? This is like, I mean, it's laughable to me, right? Like that, it's really, if I was the Commonwealth, I wouldn't even be bringing this in, because honestly, it just makes it look worse that you're going to even try to make it seem like this argument over her treating the kids nicely, quote unquote, spoiling them, like this type of thing. It's like, you're going to even bring that in and try to gaslight people to think that would be a big enough reason. Like, it's just craziness, right? To me, anyway.
what, if any, what if any occasions, as far as they're arguing or anything like that, did you observe personally yourself?
Yeah, I witnessed. So they had rented a house down Cape Cod. Say that was summer of 2021. I brought my 2 daughters down for a couple nights, and I witnessed one intense fight between the two of them.
And as far as a fight, as you're characterizing that, was that anything physical or just verbal?
No, it was a verbal argument.
And what, if anything, was that verbal argument about?
It's hard to recall. I mean, I guess like typical couples fighting. There was alcohol had been involved. I recall her complaining that he wasn't nice to her, something to that effect. And I was kind of the referee in that entire situation.
Now, when you make reference to alcohol involved, is that one or both? Or
Both.
both your brother and the defendant?
Correct.
Now, if I could turn your attention to New Year's, and specifically New Year's Eve going from 2021 into 2022. Do you recall that time?
I do.
And do you recall where you and your family were for that sort of New Year celebration?
Yeah, so I was with my wife and her family. We went to Aruba the day after Christmas in celebration of my wife's mother's 70th birthday.
Mr. Lally, does it make sense that I give an instruction at this point? I'm going to see counsel at sidebar.
Okay, we know what that means. And freaking, oh, look at that. Hold on. You guys can't probably see it because the Squinguin's up there. It says in the top right corner, it says sidebar, no audio. Well, guess what? Not anymore. Freaking Aruba. You know, the only reason why they tried to get into this whole dumb Aruba thing is because of like what I was literally just saying about how like the stupid thing about like the argument over spoiling the kids is just no one's going to believe that that could possibly be, you know, it's like that's laughable. So that's where, you know, like the example I gave, because this is what we see in other cases, right? Is like somebody was cheating and therefore murder, right? And it's like, so then enter Aruba from like months prior and, you know, whatever nonsense, trying to make it seem like that was part of it. Again, really sad. And if I was the Commonwealth, I wouldn't bring it in because it's just more embarrassing than anything else. So we need another holiday song. Okay, let me see here. What was the really good one I had? Well, anyway, I can't believe I'm not remembering these. Okay, let me go to my bookmark. I have these bookmarked here. Sidebar 3. Excellent. Okay. I need to think of a sidebar song, guys. Oh my God. Why am I blanking on these? This is crazy. There you go. Thank you, Kitsmits. Sidebar time, sidebar time, sidebars all the way. Yeah, you know, that's a good one. Sidebar time. What else? Oh, I know. This is the third sidebar of this trial. So the third sidebar. Adam Lawley did say, what if any? There you go. Okay, so here we go. All right, hold on for the siren to pass by the court. Mr. Lawley, does it make sense that I give an instruction at this point? Let me see counsel at sidebar. Sidebar. All right, Lawley says yes. The court. I don't know, court reporter. I'm having trouble. Lawley, with regard to this witness. So they were in the room around the same time, but they did not see each other. The court, okay, that's what I thought, Mr. Lawley. So the next witness, there's conversation between her, meaning Mrs. O'Keefe, Mrs. Erin O'Keefe, and the defendant in regard to what happened. He also says in regard. With this witness, it may well be hearsay. Lawley is saying that. He's saying that it's going to be hearsay. The court, okay, so no instruction, Mr. Lawley, unless the court feels it appropriate for the 2021, which I'm fine with that. If that's what the court, okay, I can do it in the final charge. Lawley, okay. Yannetti, just to confirm, if I may address the court, I'm just making sure. There was some indication on a report that Paul O'Keefe had told the police that he did not go over to Karen and John's place because they were fighting or something like that. That's what you're referring to in terms of when you say you're not seeking to elicit that from him? Lawley, correct. So he gets that information from his wife, not directly from your client. Mr. Yannetti, okay. Right. So it's like hearsay within hearsay. Mr. Lawley, but no, I'm not seeking anything about Mr. Yannetti, then that's fine. The court. So you don't want me to draw attention to it with an instruction? Lawley, correct. The court. Okay. Thank you. Whereupon the sidebar conference concluded. Dun, 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 and back to the trial. The third sidebar. What if anything cannot be counted hearsay? Yeah, I think you're. What if could not be counted hearsay. Is that how you were imagining that, Kitsmits? Adam Wally did say, what if anything cannot be counted hearsay? Yeah, that's clever. Well done on that. Well done on that one. Okay. Let's go back to the trial. Share screen. Okay. We'll see what happens.
Also in Aruba around that.
Okay. Freaking Aruba, man.
Okay. So during that New Year's Eve, you were in Aruba for your wife's mother's 70th birthday, correct?
Correct.
And was your brother, Johnny, was he also in Aruba around that same time frame?
Yes.
And your resort and your brother's resorts, where were they in relation to each other?
They were pretty much on opposite sides of the island.
And at any point in time when you were in Aruba, did you see your brother at any point?
Unfortunately, we did not.
Now, you mentioned that you were there with your wife and your children. Is that correct?
Correct.
And do you know who your brother was in Aruba with around that same time?
He was with Erin Reed and brought the kids. So Kaylee and Patrick were with him. They were also with a large group, many other couples and families.
You know who was sort of the primary organizer of that group that your brother was with?
Yes, a friend of ours, Laura Sullivan.
And how did you know Laura Sullivan?
I knew Laura through my brother. She had dated my brother's partner and one of his best friends, Pat Rogers.
And did Miss Sullivan and Mr. Rogers have a child together?
Yes, and a boy.
And at some point, did Mr. Rogers pass away?
Yes.
What was sort of the relationship between your brother and Miss Sullivan in relation to Miss Rogers' child?
Johnny was, so she has son Benjamin, who Johnny is godfather to.
And sort of towards the end of your stay in Aruba, with regard to the pandemic, what, if anything, happened to you or any other member of the family?
So my older daughter tested positive for COVID. So her and I kind of got left behind, stayed for an extra 3 or 4 days, I believe.
So after you returned from Aruba, at some point, were you and your brother trying to make plans to connect or to hang out or see each other at some point in January 2022?
Yes, we were actually planning on getting together on January 29th.
And do you recall what day of the week that was?
That was a Saturday.
And why was it Saturday? Why were you sort of targeting Saturday as a new point?
Weekend, no work. Kids didn't really have much on the schedule.
By that, you mean your kids as well as...
Correct, yes.
And then what, if anything, occurred with reference to those plans as far as them coming to a fruition?
A big snowstorm hit the area, and we'd said maybe it's probably better if we just stay home and off the roads. So we kind of canceled getting together the day before.
So initially had a meeting for the 29th, but canceled it the day before on the 28th?
Correct.
So this snowstorm that you were talking about was coming in. Is that something that you and your brother were aware of prior to that day it happened?
Yes.
And was that something you learned of? Where did you learn about that?
The news.
So sort of all over the news, is that fair to say?
Correct, yes.
And as far as did either you, your children, or John's children, for lack of a better term, niece and nephew, were there any sort of planned activities for that day that got canceled because of the weather or no?
On that Saturday, the 29th? I think everything was pretty much canceled. I don't know anything specific. We had, my daughters had basketball on Friday night, the night before, but we didn't really have any plans for the children on Saturday.
Now, turning your attention to that day of the 28th, so the day before that was Friday, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And you mentioned that your daughters had basketball that evening, is that correct?
Correct.
And what, if any, role do you have in regard to your daughters' basketball?
I coach both of their teams.
And so you coached 2 games that Friday night?
Correct.
And about what time do you know that if you know, did you sort of get home from all of that?
First game was at 6, second game was at 7:15, so we got home 8:30ish.
And your wife was with you at both of your daughters' games?
Correct. And
when you got home, the snow that had been predicted, had it started at that point where you were?
I noticed the first flurries sometime between 10:30 and 11 p.m.
And if you know, approximately what time did you go to bed then?
Right around probably midnight.
And your wife, Erin, did she go to bed same time as you?
I think she went to bed a little before me, yes.
Now, earlier in that day, that Friday the 28th, what, if any, conversation by any means did you have with your brother John?
My last communication with him was on a group text exchange that included myself, Karen Reed, and my mother. And he was excited because our niece Kaylee had gotten accepted to Bishop Fee in high school. So he was happy, proud dad moment. And then Patrick's national math scores came back, and he scored extremely high. So he was extremely proud of Patrick that day as well.
So he had sort of sent your brother John, sort of sent that to the group, which included yourself, your mother, and Miss Reed.
Correct.
And
let me know what else we need to add.
As far as what grade was she in, and what grade was she going into as far as that application to?
Yeah, so she was 8th grade going into 9th, freshman year in high school.
Oh, they're so much more formal.
Now, you go to bed at some point in the evening of the 28th, and you woke up on the 29th. Do you recall what woke you up on that morning?
Yes, my mother called me at 6:40 a.m.
Is that something typical?
No. She called and just said something happened to your brother. They found him in the snow, and they took him to the hospital.
And which hospital was it?
Good Samaritan in Brockton, Massachusetts.
And at that point, did you, or what if any other sort of information did you have as to what had happened to you?
I really didn't know much until I got to the hospital. While I was at the hospital, my cousin works 911 dispatch, so she came down because she had heard. And the only thing I was able to get was that, he was cold and they needed to warm him up, but didn't have much information other than that.
So you get that information from your cousin when you get to the hospital, correct?
Correct.
That cousin, what was her name?
Susanna Hensley.
If I could take you back to just prior, so you initially get the phone call from your mother, Peggy O'Keefe, is that correct?
Correct.
That's about 6:40 in the morning?
Correct.
And your wife Erin is with you at that time, is that correct?
Correct.
And so you get that call and sort of what is it that you do, or sort of how quickly are you out the door?
I jumped out of bed, got changed, brushed my teeth, and I was out the door.
And you drove from your house to work?
Yes, I drove myself from my house to the hospital, Good Samaritan Hospital.
And what kind of car did you have at that point, if you know?
A Toyota 4Runner.
That's an SUV?
That's an SUV, yes.
What color was that?
Black.
And as far as the road conditions, visibility, sort of when you're driving from West Bridgewater to Brockton, what, if anything, did you observe as far as how the roads were?
Driving was very poor that morning and just continued to get worse throughout the day. So it took me longer than usual than it typically would to drive that distance.
Now, as far as your parents were concerned, did they come to the Good Samaritan Hospital as well?
Yes, our friend Kerry Roberts picked them up in Braintree and brought them to the hospital in Brockton.
When you say your friend Kerry Roberts, how do you know Kerry Roberts?
So we grew up in Braintree. She grew up in Braintree as well. 2 years older than me. Knew my brother. They went to homecoming together one year. And she also resides in Canton.
So she was someone who had grown up with you and your brother, was friends with you and also friends with your brother, correct?
Correct.
Now, as far as your arrival at the Good Samaritan, who arrived first? Was it you, your parents, or something else?
I got there first.
And about how long was it, if you know, between the time that you got there and the time that your parents arrived there with your parents?
Probably about 45 minutes.
And when you arrived at the Good Samaritan Medical Center, where within the facility did you sort of go?
Emergency room waiting area, lobby.
And at some point, did you, after your parents arrived, did you move from the waiting room area to somewhere else within the hospital?
So when my parents arrived, they brought us, in the double doors into like a little family sitting room.
And about how long was it that you were in the family sitting room before you went somewhere else?
So we were in that waiting room. Doctor and nurse came in and told us that all their efforts to save my brother were unsuccessful and that he had passed away. And then asked if we wanted to go see him, in which we said yes. So we left that room and walked down the hallway to this hospital room.
And that doctor you spoke to, do you recall what the doctor's name was?
Dr. Rice.
And when you say that we went down to the room where your brother was that everyone in the group?
It was myself and my parents, yes.
And Miss Roberts, did she go as well? Or did she?
No, she stayed out in the waiting area.
And as you were making your way down to the room where they had your brother, what if anything occurred along the way?
So I noticed Karen Reed was there. She was being restrained by hospital employees, and she was, screaming out to us, asking if he was alive.
Is that something that she screamed out once, more than once, or something else?
Several times.
Now, at some point, you went into the room where your brother was, correct?
Okay.
Correct.
Why?
And
How is that supposed to be incriminating, though? Isn't that a normal thing? Never mind. No point. No point.
can you describe to the jury sort of what you saw as far as your brother was concerned?
He was pretty banged up. He had his eyes had swelled up. He had a breathing tube in, a mask anyway. Blood come down his nose, blood come down his mouth. But what really stood out to me was, the eyes. It was almost as if like there were ping pong balls under his eyelids. They were that swollen.
Now, in addition to what you observed as far as his eyes, what, if any, other sort of injuries did you observe on any other part of your brother's body?
I noticed some markings on his arm. Didn't look at his lower torso area at all because he was covered by a sheet. So most of the injuries that we observed was to the head area and face area.
And when you say his arm, do you recall whether that was one arm, both arms, or which arm in particular?
He had markings on his right arm, I didn't notice anything on the other side.
That Chloe really did a number on him.
You spent some time privately as a family with your brother. At some point you left, is that correct?
Yes, I'd estimate we were probably in the room with him for probably 20 minutes until we left.
And after about that 20 minutes, you come back out to the hallway, and where are you going?
Yeah, we went back to the waiting area, trying to figure out, can we leave? Do we leave? So yes, we left. My mother drove with me. My father drove with Kerry Roberts. We went from the hospital at Good Samaritan in Brockton back to my brother's house in Canton.
And if I could just take you back for a moment. So as you exit the room where your brother is and you come back out in the hallway, what, if anything, occurred at that point?
Again, we saw Karen Reed being restrained by hospital employees, screaming the same things. Is he alive? Is he alive? Is he alive?
You, at any point, either before or after, respond to any of that screaming that you heard from the defendant?
I actually blew her a kiss.
Now, as far as your relationship with the defendant, Ms. Reed, prior to January 29th, 2022, how would you characterize it?
I thought we had a good relationship. I held her in very high regard. I thought she was a good influence on my niece and nephew. I appreciated all the help that she was providing to my brother with the kids. We'd go out together as couples a couple times. She became very friendly with my wife, but I'd say overall we had a good relationship.
As far as those positive feelings that you had in relation to the defendant prior to January 29th, 2022, had you expressed those to either the defendant or any member of her family?
Yes. So Christmas Eve of 2021 was the first time I met her parents. My brother hosted Christmas Eve at his house. I met Mr. and Mrs. Reed. I offered to help Mrs. Reed carry some things in from her car. And as we were walking to the car, I said, I just want to tell you, I think your daughter's great. I think very appreciative of what she's done for the kids and helping my brother.
Now, turning back to that day of January 29th, you go back out to the waiting area, is that correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, happened? What did you see or speak to when you got out?
I saw her father, Bill Reed, come into the hospital. He was picking up Karen as we were pretty much exiting the hospital to head back to Canton.
And did you have any conversation with him?
I did not.
Now, you indicated that you drove with your mother back to Meadows Ave where your brother lived, is that correct?
That's correct.
And Ms. Roberts drove with your father back to the same location, is that correct?
That is correct.
And as far as your understanding sort of on the drive back, where were kids? Where was Kaylee and Patrick?
So Kaylee was picked up by Mike Camerano, who's her Kaylee.
Can y'all hear Bev sighing into the microphone the whole time in the background?
His best friend's father. Patrick was at a sleepover the night before, so he was still with the family at the house where he slept the night before.
And you mentioned that the drive from your house from West Bridgewater to Brockton was somewhat difficult, correct?
Very difficult.
How would you characterize the drive from Brockton?
Was it because of the snow?
And to your brother's house?
Here we go.
I mean, at one point I said to my mother, I don't know if we're gonna make it back. Visibility was terrible.
He's going to die in the drive.
Into the roads. We made it back. It was just a very, very difficult. Probably the worst driving conditions I've driven
in the whole world.
And so then, at some point, you and your vehicle, Ms. Roberts, and hers, and your parents, you arrived at your brother's house in Canton, correct?
That's correct.
Know about what time of day that was?
It was mid-morning, so maybe between 10 and 11 o'clock in the morning.
And was there anybody present at the house when you arrived there?
No.
And at some point, did other people come over? As far as specifically, I'm asking about the children.
Yes. So Kaylee was dropped off shortly after we arrived, and then a little while after that, Patrick was dropped off from his sleepover.
And at some point, you were tasked with informing the children what happened to your brother, correct?
Correct.
At some point after you left the hospital in Brockton, what, if any, conversation, what, if any, phone calls did you receive in relation to the defendant, Ms. Reed?
Karen Reed called me, asked me if it was okay to come over and to see the kids, and I said sure.
And do you know how long that phone call went on for?
It was a quick phone call, maybe a minute. I said she just asked if she could come over, and I said sure. And then she arrived at the house, shortly thereafter.
When you initially arrived at the house, along with the parents and Ms. Roberts and her vehicle, what any other vehicles did you observe sort of in the driveway at that time?
I only noticed, I think, my brother's car. I mean, I don't even recall seeing any other cars. I mean, it could have been a car in the garage, but I didn't notice really. Nothing stands out.
What kind of car did your brother have?
Chevy Traverse.
What color was that, if you know?
Like gray.
And if you recall, when you first sort of arrived there, where was that vehicle parked in relation to the road?
I believe it was the right side of the driveway, all the way down to the end of the drive, like the top of the driveway.
Now, you had the phone call with the defendant. You indicated it's fine for her to come over. You know about how long it was after receiving that phone call and when Ms. Reed arrived there?
20 to 30 minutes, maybe.
And when she arrived at your brother's house, who, if anyone, was she with?
She was with her father.
And at some point, was there anyone else from her family that came over the house that morning?
Her brother and his wife showed up shortly after she arrived with her father, yes.
And how many cars, if you know, come in between sort of the...
They each took separate vehicles, so 2 cars arrived.
And Ms. Reed's vehicle, you know where that vehicle was in relation to your brother's house at that time?
It was either in the driveway or in the garage. I'm not positive.
So fair to say it was at the house, correct?
It was at the house, yes.
So between the Reed family, there's 3 vehicles at your brother's house, correct?
Correct.
Now, the defendant mentioned that you had met her father before on Christmas Eve, is that right?
Correct.
Had you met her brother or brother's wife prior to that day?
No.
And you were in the house when they arrived, is that correct?
When Karen and her father arrived, I was shoveling the walkway out front.
And in total, about how much time was the defendant in the house that morning when she came in?
I would probably say about 30 minutes.
And at that point, when the defendant arrived, was either Kaylee or Patrick or both home at that time?
Yes. They were.
That shoveling of the walkway was the first, I would say, predecessor to the shoveling of the apron, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Come home first, and then Patrick could come home. So I think Patrick may have come home while they were there.
And you mentioned when they arrived, you were out shoveling sort of the front walk, correct?
Yes.
And when they arrived, did you go in the house with them, or did you continue shoveling or something else?
It's exhausting.
I continued shoveling for a very short period of time, and went in the house like pretty much right after they did.
And when you got in the house, what was it sort of that you were doing at that time?
I mean, we had just told Kaylee what had happened, and we were waiting for Patrick to get home, so we were kind of just congregated in the kitchen.
When you say we, who exactly are you talking
Sorry, myself, my mother, my father.
Was Miss Roberts still there, or is she gone home?
I don't recall.
And so, in addition to yourself, your mother, and your father, Miss Reed, her father, any other sort of members of her family, where were they within the house?
So mainly the kitchen at first. When Patrick came home, we kind of took him to like the side room where the kids hang out, talked to him in that room, and then we were in the kitchen. Then Miss Reed and her father went upstairs.
And when you sat down with Patrick to tell him what had happened to your brother, who, if anyone else, was with you at that point?
Karen Reed.
And at some point subsequent to that, you went back to the kitchen, correct?
Yes.
And where was it that the defendant and her father went?
Upstairs, into the bedroom.
And if you know, about how long were they in the upstairs area of the house?
I would say 10 to 15 minutes.
And them as they came down the stairs?
Yeah, so I was on the phone a few times. So I didn't watch them walk upstairs, but I saw them come downstairs, turn the corner at the bottom of the stairs. She had some of her belongings that she had taken from the bedroom.
And where did she go with those belongings?
They left. Like I said, they were probably there for 30 minutes. They got in their cars and drove back to Dayton, Massachusetts.
And when you say got back in their cars, you mentioned 3 cars that had been there in the driveway or in the area of the house, correct?
Correct.
When the defendant left, how many of those cars remained?
0.
And as far as the weather conditions that you had mentioned that existed at the time that you drove from the hospital in Brockton to your brother's home in Canton, if any improvement occurred with the weather during that time frame?
None.
So essentially the same, is that fair to say?
Yeah, it was still, the conditions were still poor.
Now, with respect to Miss Reed's vehicle, did you know what kind of vehicle Miss Reed had?
A Lexus SUV. I don't know the actual model.
Mr. Lally, that clock is actually wrong. It's just about 1 o'clock. So is this a good place to take a break?
Perfectly fine.
All right, jurors, it's the luncheon break. We'll break for an hour. We'll be here ready to go no later than 2 o'clock.
All right, please.
I guarantee you, people are falling asleep, and that's what's going on. Okay, thank God, lunch break. So moving right along. All right, now we're going to get into some video here. Back to Paul on the stand. All right, Smith
So Mr.
went.
You testifying before the luncheon recess before.
It's
you
rough.
had
I'm
indicated
sorry,
that-
it's rough. It really is. But you know what? It gets better as we get into day 2 because that's when the first responders start coming up to the stand, and then we get into the whole, all the goodness of the snowblower and the Stop and Shop and all the rest of it. But we are we're moving right along. We've got Paul, and then we've got I forget this lady's name, one of the friends there. I think it's Mrs. Camarano. And then actually, that's right. They do actually get to the first officer on the scene there for a little bit. But yeah, okay. So we are going to continue right along here.
Ben and Miss Reed had gone upstairs for some period of time. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's at your brother's house on Meadows Ave?
Correct.
And who, if anyone, had she gone upstairs with?
Her father.
But how long were they upstairs for?
10, 15 minutes.
And as far as, was there anyone else in the upstairs area at home with them at the time that they were upstairs?
No, nothing I'm aware of.
Now, as far as Miss Reed was concerned, what, if any, conversation did you have with her while she was at the house for that period of 30 minutes or so?
None, really.
And as far as any other members of her family, without any reference to what it was, what, if any, sort of substantial conversation, what, if any, conversation did you have with either her father, her brother, or the brother's wife?
Again, none, not really. I didn't really have much interaction with any of them while they're at the house.
Now, you're obviously familiar with your brother's house on Meadows Ave, is that correct?
Yes.
And as far as the house itself, what, if any, sort of security did your brother have installed on that house on Meadows Ave?
Excuse me, a ring doorbell, and then a ring camera floodlight combination of the garage doors overlooking the driveway.
And when you say the doorbell, how many sort of points of, how many doors or entrances into the house were there?
With cameras, I would say 2. I mean, the driveway and then the main front door of the house.
Are they supposed to witness?
Yes.
Just 3 photographs. It's 2, 3, and 4. If you could just look at those briefly and look up when you finish. And generally speaking, sir, do you recognize what's depicted in those 3 photographs?
Yes. The first.
Before we get to them, just in general,
yes.
do you recognize those? Okay. And what do you recognize this them in general terms? What do you recognize them to be? Photographs of?
That's my brother's house at 1 Meadows Ave in Canton.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit 2 up on the screen. So I'm going to show you I'm going to hand you here as a laser point. Basically, just put this one here. Okay. And again, sir, what's up on the screen is exhibit number 2. What are we looking at?
That's my brother's house at 1 Meadows Ave in Canton.
And as far as the ring doorbell camera that you were referring to, is that something that's visible in this photograph?
Not in that photograph, no.
And so typically when you would come over to your brother's house, what would be sort of the general points or door that you would use to go inside the house?
So either the garage door or there's a side door right behind that bush.
So behind that bush, is there any sort of like walkway or anything like that over there?
Yeah, so there's a walkway that leads up to a couple of steps and then to the entryway.
Is that where the ring doorbell would have been located, labeled as sort of the front door?
Yes.
And the garage area, the driveway that you were referencing in relation to this photograph, it's not depicted in this photograph, is that fair to say?
Correct.
So which sort of, with relation to this photograph, understanding that it's not depicted in it, where would that be?
The driveway would be to the right side of the house as we're viewing it from here.
And if I could turn your attention to the next exhibit, number 3, Ms. Gilman, if I could have that. And what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as exhibit number 3?
Correct.
And whereabouts in relation to the house, what are we looking at here?
So that would be the driveway, right side of the house, 2 garage doors, the upstairs window, and the ring camera / floodlight combination.
Oh my God, this is just so boring. So Kits, why was I thinking you were not actually in Portland? Because wasn't there a city where Glenn lives? Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of, is that where Glenn lives, it's not actually in Portland, but it's some other name that you don't hear of as much. Maybe that's what I was thinking of. And then I was confabulating that with whether or not you were actually in legit Portland. But that's sick that you're actually in actual Portland.
With respect to the garage, was there a particular way that your brother would have kept sort of the garage area?
Yeah, he had on the left side, he had a 1971 Ford LTD parked over that side. And he would typically park his car on the right side.
So the car that you were talking about before, that being the Chevy Traverse, is that correct?
Correct.
And so the floodlight combination with the camera, that you see that in this photograph, is that correct?
Yes.
If you could just using the laser pointer direct your attention to that.
Right under the window.
I mean, it's pretty noticeable, Lolly.
And as far as these particular ring cameras, driveway, garage one, and the front door, the sort of side entryway there, who, if anyone, as far as you knew, had access to those particular cameras? How would they be accessed?
Most likely through the Ring app on your cell phone. I believe the only ones who had access to was my brother and Karen Reed.
And as far as your brother,
Right. I'll strike that. See if you can lay a foundation.
as far as your brother was, what What, if anything, would he do with reference to those Ring cameras and his app on his phone when people would arrive at his house?
I mean, a few times he talked to me through the speaker. If I pulled up to the house and he wasn't home, he would speak to me on it, but I'm not sure if I follow the entire question.
No, and that's exactly. So there were points where you would come to the house, correct, and he wasn't there?
Yes.
And he would sort of talk to you through the Ring application, is that fair to say?
Yes.
Now, as far as Ms. Reed was, when you say you believe she had access to it, what leads you to believe?
Together.
I believe the kids had mentioned it before. Kaylee and Patrick, mostly Patrick.
That's hearsay.
All right, I'm going to strike that.
Now, if I could direct your attention to the next exhibit before you, exhibit number 4. And again, sir, what's up on screen, is that what you have before you as exhibit 4?
Correct.
And if you could describe to the jury sort of what part of the house we're looking at here and what, if anything, in relation to the Ring that you observed.
That is also the driveway from a different view. Call it the top of the driveway looking down onto the street. Right in this picture here, the Ring camera or the floodlight ring is not visible.
And the walkway that you were talking about, it was behind the bush. Do you see that in this photograph?
Yes.
If you could direct the jury's attention where that is. So if you follow that walkway sort of around to the bush, where does that lead?
Right to the like breezeway door.
If I may approach it.
Yes.
Now, Mr. O'Keefe, the Ring camera that we're talking about, have you seen those on like a disc form? Is that correct?
Have I seen them on a disc form? I'm not sure if I follow that question.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a terrible question.
Have you viewed any Ring camera footage from either the front door or the driveway to your brother's house?
No, I didn't have access.
Now, maybe approach.
Yes.
All right, have yourself another little sidebar. Here we go with sidebar number 4. Boop, 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 boop. All right. Excellent. Man, I feel for the jury. I mean, we're watching all this like at 1.5 speed, and it's just grueling with Lolly, isn't it? All right. Here we go. Lolly, Your Honor, may we approach? Yes, counsel. Okay. Lolly, so they're not marked as exhibits yet, but what I'd like to do is show this witness some video from the Ring, whether she's on the Ring footage or it comes from that day. So I am just the court. Is this going to be an agreed upon exhibit? Is this going to be an agreed upon exhibit? Why does she just repeat herself? Mr. Lolly, I believe so, but Jackson says, just explain which one it is, which Ring video it is. Lolly, probably I think there was one where he arrived, or when he arrives back at the house from the hospital, along with his friends and Miss Roberts. And then there is when Miss Reed arrives with her father, and then basically just to identify who these people are in the videos. And then there's a couple just in reference to sort of snow removal from the driveway. There it is, guys. And when that occurred. Mr. Unetti, we have no objection to that. The court, that's fine. So let's mark it as an exhibit. Mr. Unetti, that's fine. The court, okay. Whereupon the sidebar is concluded and we go back to court. Let's go. Okie dokie. Oh, right. That's the sidebar that we just read. See how this is great? See, literally, it's like, oh, you know how we're like watching these trials, we're like, gosh, what are they talking about at sidebar, right? Well, now we know. And so that's the whole point. So instead of silence, we get me reading the sidebars with the Christmas.
So, Ms. Gilman, if I could have...
Okay.
Go right ahead.
No.
Let's go.
Okay. So...
And let us know if you want the lights dimmed at all, Mr. Lally.
Yes, please. Your Honor.
Do you want that now?
Yes.
Would please? Thank you.
So, Ms. Gilman, if I could have from what's been marked as Exhibit 6, driveway camera. If I could have video number 161. And if you could just pause that just for a moment. Now, Mr. O'Keefe, what's up on the screen there? Do you generally recognize what's depicted there?
Okay, so this is just, we've seen these. I'm going to go ahead a little bit just because I just can't. We've seen these a million times. This is the snow. There's going to be some shoveling of the snow. Let's get past this video footage that we've all seen a bazillion times. Oh my God, look, there's more. This goes on. And then he gets in this picture of him in the car though, which is interesting. Let's see. Oh, this is on Cross, maybe? Let's see here.
Ms. Courthouse, we can have the lights back up.
I think this is the end of direct, maybe?
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
For sure.
with the north exhibit. Recognize that?
Oh my God.
What you have before you is exhibit number 1.
Yes,
And what are we looking at in this exhibit?
that's my brother.
And as far as your earlier testimony in regard to the vehicle that he kept sort of on the left side of the garage, what, if anything, do you recognize?
It's depicted in the picture. It's a convertible 1971 Ford LTD.
And with reference to that vehicle, how did your brother feel about that vehicle?
He enjoyed it. He thought it was fun driving around.
I mean, relevance though, to be honest, like, come
In a
on.
convertible. Nephew Patrick enjoyed, being driven to baseball games and whatnot in it. So
And your niece, Kaylee, how did she feel about it?
she did not like it. Still doesn't.
Thanks, sir. May I approach this retriever?
Oh my God. I love
May I
the,
approach this retriever?
I love when it showed like just they can't get it together. And it was like this the whole trial, right? Not for the defense, only for the prosecution, where they would just leave up their file explorer. It's just like, what are we doing? Now, cross. No,
Mr. O'Keefe, sir, I have no questions for you.
oh, I'm
All
not,
right, Mr. O'Keefe, you are all set.
not
sir.
excited because I saw Jackson's face close up.
Thank
You're
you.
right.
Thank you.
You're right, Bender. Cross.
1 second. Joe.
Mr. Officer, the officer give the court during the case now here the truth, the whole truth, and
All
nothing
right,
but the
new
truth, so help
witness.
you God. Thank you. You may take this.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name? please?
Sure, it's Erin O'Keefe,
Oh, that's
O-K-E-E-F-E,
Erin O'Keefe. Okay.
And where is it that you live now?
West Bridgewater.
And who, if anyone, do you live there with?
I live with my husband, Paul, and our 2 girls.
And how long have you lived there in West Bridgewater?
Be 10 years this year.
And your girls, how old are your girls?
Now 13 and 10.
So,
And what is your husband's
okay. I think I remember seeing her test. So she, true to Lolly, right? She actually testifies exactly to like a lot of what was already covered. It's cumulative. It's not like a lot of this is the same. Although that looks like, is that what's happening here?
Nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. You may take this.
Oh, weird. That's what we just saw. Okay. But I think there's just a bit there that is different. I'm just going to go ahead a little bit because she does offer some testimony that's different or new.
Did Johnny have during that time?
2.
Again, see here, it proves my point, right? He's asking the question, how many relationships did John have during that? 2. I mean, same, literally just did all this. Literally just did all this.
Could expound upon that a little as far as when you say normal relationship stuff, what exactly do you mean?
I know that, my in-laws being there often could be stressful. And, 2
Bye,
people
Fender. We
with
love
kids
you.
in life.
Love you, Fender.
Normal everyday relationship.
Now, during this time frame, you were living in West Bridgewater still, is that correct?
Correct.
And where were you, like what town were you working in at that point?
At that time, I was working in Brighton.
So fair to say, relatively long commute between Brighton and West Bridgewater on a daily basis.
Correct.
And so during that sort of long commute, what, if anything, would you do with reference to the defendant, or who, if anyone, would you typically talk to on those long commutes?
I would text her or call her and say I'm hey and driving, or she would call me and we would just shoot the breeze and just talk.
Great.
Was that something, how often would you do?
Oh my God. I feel like there is something interesting that happens. Okay, let's try this.
From 2021 into 2022. Do you recall that
Does
time frame?
something happen?
Do you recall where you were, who you were with around that time?
We were in Aruba for my mother's birthday.
Aruba.
And when you say we, who, if anyone, were you in Aruba?
My mother, father, sister, husband, and our 2 girls.
And over the course of that, were you also aware of where your brother-in-law, Johnny O'Keefe, and Miss Reed, and children, Patrick and Kaylee, were at that time as well?
They were also in Aruba.
And so where they were situated in Aruba, where was that in relation to where you were situated?
We weren't close. You'd need a cab. It was not the other side of the island, but far enough away you'd need to catch a cab. They were more downtown.
And what, if anything, did you know about sort of who they were with or how they had come to be there in Aruba?
They were with a large group of people. I don't know how many, but there was a large group of people that was going down.
And as far as you knew, was there any one person, excuse me, in particular that organized sort of that trip? Or
Yes, Laura Sullivan.
and do you know Laura Sullivan?
I do.
And how do you know Laura Sullivan?
I know Laura through Johnny. He's her son's godfather.
And let's say, as far as you knew, that Mr. O'Keefe, Johnny O'Keefe, and Laura Sullivan had known each other for some time.
I mean, here's the thing. We're going to hear from the sister Sullivan. I'm just getting so frustrated because we're going to hear all of this in excruciating detail when they testify. Why are we asking this witness about this? Who cares about the flight attendants? I swear to God, I can't with this Aruba. We're going to go ahead a little bit. Is Bev speaking up? Let's see what
Can I
happens.
give a brief instruction at this point? Right, excuse me. So, folks, you just heard testimony about statements that were allegedly made by the defendant. You're really not to use the statements for the truth, but you can consider them solely on the limited purpose of the defendant's state of mind and as they go to the nature of the relationship between the defendant and John O'Keefe. Thank you.
She really looked just there for a second. She really looked like her little, where is it? Did I make one of these? Let's see here. I think it's an emoji, but I don't have it. Yeah, there's the Bev emoji. Anyway, she really looked like her emoji there for a second. Anyways.
Now, between that time in Aruba and January 28th of 2022, had you had occasion to meet up with Johnny O'Keefe and or the defendant Karen Reed or the kids or anybody from that Canton house?
No, our older daughter tested positive, and she and Paul.
Oh my God, I can't. I just why? Just why? Get together. Great. That's so good. Okay, here we go with the storm. All right.
All sort of about what you were aware of as far as that storm, like how severe, what kind of storm?
I don't recall specifics, but I knew that it was a big storm that was coming for Saturday with a lot of snow.
Yep, it was a lot of snow. It was a big.
And so you didn't think that was a good idea to set up a time to meet up with that?
Correct.
Now, on that date of January 28th, what, if any, conversation did you have with Ms. Reed on that day?
She had texted me while I was waiting for the school bus, asking if there was any chance I was out without Paul.
Was that a typical thing that she would text you as far as the without Paul part?
No.
And you indicated that you were waiting for the school bus, is that right?
Correct.
And at that time in January 2022, you had two daughters, correct?
I have to say, whoever does her hair color has done a phenomenal job, and that was not a flattering pause.
Correct.
Were they for them?
It's a really great color for her. Like, that's really nice. That's really well done. Like, just the color job on that hair. I just wanted to say.
Same school as far as on the same bus?
No, they were not. They're separate schools.
So I would say one was maybe in elementary, one was in middle school?
Correct.
So as far as around that time that you received the text, would that have been the younger daughter or the older daughter that you were waiting for?
The younger daughter. It was after 3:00.
And who comes home?
Why can't we just see the text messages from, like, you know, I don't know, a Celebrate extraction or whatever?
Home, or at that time, who came home first, the younger daughter or the older?
Our older daughter.
And when you received that text from the defendant, what, if anything, did you, or how did you respond?
I said that I was waiting for the school bus and we had basketball on Friday nights.
The best.
And the basketball on Friday nights, was that something that was one of your daughters or both?
Both.
And do you recall, well, let me ask you this, with regard to your daughter's basketball,
Right
that's
right now.
what, if any, sort of relationship did your husband have to those basketball teams?
He was the coach for both of them.
And was that something that was sort of like a local league, is that correct?
Town league.
And did all of you, and by all I mean yourself, your husband, and the two girls, did you all go to both games that night?
Correct.
And do you recall about what time those games were?
6 or 7.
Now, Ms. Reed reached out to you and texted you, and then you responded as you described. What, if any, further conversation did you have with Ms. Reed on that day?
I asked her if everything was okay, if something was up, and she responded and said, "Just another day. I wish I didn't talk to an O'Keefe after 2004.
And how did you respond to that?
I said, "What happened? What's going on?" And they had bickered, I guess, about her taking Kaylee to Dunkin' Donuts in the morning before school.
Okay. There's no receipts for this, right? We don't have any text messages. That it's just her testifying to this, first thing. Second of all, why would somebody say that to somebody who is part of the O'Keefe family? She is an O'Keefe. She married an O'Keefe. Her last name is O'Keefe. It strains credulity to me that somebody, unless they were like, didn't realize who they were talking to or had the wrong person, would say that to somebody who is one of those people. So that just makes no sense.
And just to be clear, when you say they, you mean Johnny O'Keefe and Karen?
Correct.
Do you recall sort of how that conversation evolved, or what, if anything, else was said during that time?
I just knew that they had gotten into some type, I don't know if it was an argument or there was something. They bickered about her taking them, and he said that she spoiled them.
Now, as far as your conversation with Ms. Reed in regards to the weekends, what, if anything, did the two of you talk about as far as sort of plans for the weekend?
I said I was anticipating a storm, so was probably going to hang in the neighborhood with everybody.
Now, as far as later on in that afternoon, what, if any, sort of further communication did you receive from Ms. Reed that day?
I think the last text was a picture of something that popped up in her memories of my children and Kaylee and Patrick from the Cape that summer, and said, "This just popped up in my memories and made me smile."
Now, did you have occasion to talk with Ms. Reed any further on that day, the 28th?
No, that was it.
And so you went to your kids' basketball games, came back to your house, is that correct?
Correct.
And do you recall about what time you went to bed that night?
It was either close to midnight or after, because Paul and I were sitting up watching TV.
Do you recall what you were watching on TV?
Yellowstone.
Was that sort of a binge watch that you were doing?
Yes.
Didn't that come up in some
Now-
other trial?
Before you went to bed, did you have occasion to sort of, knowing that the snow was coming, did you have occasion to sort of look out and make any observations about what the weather was like before you went to bed?
I noted that while we were still up watching television that it was snowing already.
And did you
Oh,
have
it was
occasion to see whether or not it was
snowing.
sort of
There's snow.
sticking to the
There's
pavement or the grass or anything like that?
I looked out on the deck and it was starting to accumulate on the deck, sticking to the deck.
You know about what time that was?
Probably around 10:30 or 11.
And this is at your house in West Bridgewater.
Correct.
Now, you go to bed and at some point you wake up on the 29th, and if you recall, what is it that wakes you up the next morning?
You go to bed and at some point you wake up. No, she's still asleep right now. In fact, this is all a dream, rather a nightmare. That explains
Woke up to my husband on the phone with his mother saying he's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. And they got off the phone and I said, what happened? And what's going on? And he said they found Johnny in the snow this morning.
And after that phone call, what is it that your husband called you?
He's pacing around and he goes to the bathroom to brush his teeth because he said that he was going to drive to the hospital.
Do you know what hospital he was going to drive to?
Good Samaritan.
And based on the weather and sort of the road conditions, what, if any, concerns that you have about that plan of your husband?
I was concerned with him driving because the roads weren't good.
Now, as far as your in-laws, so your father-in-law is John O'Keefe Jr., is that correct?
Senior.
And your mother-in-law is Margaret or Peggy O'Keefe? is that
Correct.
And what, if any, information did you have as far as were they going to the hospital, and if so, how were they there?
They were going to the hospital and Kerry Roberts was going to pick them up because they didn't have a car that could drive in the snow.
Now, was Kerry Roberts someone that you knew prior to this date?
I knew her from when Johnny moved to Canton.
And at some points, do you recall approximately how long was it between the time that the phone call comes in and the time that your husband left your house?
10 minutes.
Relatively quick. I'm sorry, just have to.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So then, when your husband is leaving, what, if any, similar to earlier the previous evening, what, if any, observations did you make as sort of the weather and what was going on outside at the time?
It was snowing when he was leaving. Heavy.
Was it now? Was it snowing? I can't, y'all.
Now, at some point,
Oh my God.
you're at home and your children are at home with you, is that correct?
Correct.
And at some point, who, if anyone, do you reach out to sort of find out what's going on?
If anyone.
When Paul was brushing his teeth, I said to him, where's Karen? Where is she? Is she okay? And I called her and I could hear the phone pick up and she didn't say hello. I just said, Karen, what the hell is going on? And she just yelled back in the phone, John's dead. And Kerry Roberts grabbed the phone from her and said, no, he's not. He's at the hospital. They're working on him. And I didn't know what was going on.
Was there any further conversation on that initial phone call that you made to?
They were in Kerry's car waiting for an ambulance to pick up Karen. And then Kerry was going to pick up my in-laws.
You know, I'm just reflecting on it, and I'm just, in hindsight, just thinking about this. Let me know what you guys remember. I feel like in the first trial, there was a lot more that came in about Karen and being like sectioned or whatever, you know, that whole thing. I feel like that barely came up in the second trial, like if at all. Like I don't remember that. I just don't remember that really coming up. I feel like it came up a lot more in this trial. Let me know what you guys remember about that.
As far as sort of going through that day, what was the next learned as far as your brother-in-law, Johnny, and who did you learn from?
When I spoke to Kerry in the car, I asked her to take my phone number. I knew she was going to the hospital and I was nervous that Paul was going to be there by himself. So I asked her to please keep me informed as to what was happening when she got there.
And without any reference to anything Ms. Roberts may or may not have said to you, did you receive further updates from Ms. Roberts throughout the course of that morning?
I think I called her every 5 minutes.
And at some point, did you learn what sort of the status was in regards to John?
I think it was, I don't recall the exact time, but Kerry had texted me or called me to let me know when they were finally called in by the doctors from the emergency room.
And what, if anything, did you learn once they've been called in by the doctor?
All right, sustained.
At some point later on in that day, did you have further conversation with the defendant?
I did.
And do you remember approximately what time that was?
I think it was around 1 o'clock.
And if you recall, was that a situation where you called her or she called you? Or
I called her because I didn't know what was going on. And I kept saying to my husband, has anyone checked on Karen? Is Karen okay? So I called her.
And when you called her, what, if any, conversation did you have with her at that time?
She answered the phone and said that I was on speaker and she was in the car with her dad and they were driving to Dighton.
And what, if any, questions did you ask her about what had happened, and what, if anything, did she say?
I asked her, I said, what the hell happened last night? And because I couldn't understand first how they were together if they had been arguing earlier in the day. And she told me that they were out, that she dropped him at a party afterwards, didn't feel like going, so dropped him and went back to Canton.
What, if anything, did she say occurred after dropping John off?
She said she went back to Canton and I think woke up around 4:30 and couldn't find him, and woke up Kaylee to see if Kaylee had heard from him at all.
What, if anything, did she say happened after that?
She said that she went to go out and look, but the roads were bad, so went back and called Kerry and Jen so that they could drive together.
And by Kerry, you understood that to mean Kerry Roberts.
Kerry Roberts.
And by Jen, who, if anyone, did you understand that to mean?
Jen McCabe.
Is that someone that you knew or were familiar with at that time?
I had never met Jen.
And what, if anything, did she say happened after that when she went out with Kerry and Jen?
Is it possible to refresh my memory on that?
Without getting into that, just as far as
Molly?
beyond sort of what happened, what, if anything, else did the defendant say to you as far as
She told me that she had to remember the bad times, which struck me as an odd comment to say, but I assumed since she was at the hospital that maybe she was medicated, but it just struck me as something odd.
Now, in addition to the having to remember the bad times, what, if anything, else did she say to you at that point during that phone call?
She said, I don't think I'm ever going to see you guys again. And I said, of course you will. We're friends.
Now, following that conversation and that day, did you ever speak with Lieutenant Karen Reed again?
The thing that I would say, I think that is, how to put this? I think that it is, if one would have cause to find fault with the O'Keefe family, at least from my perspective, it would be that they are able to choose to whatever completely disregard science and all logic in order to stick with their prior beliefs, whether it's a pride thing, whether it's just acting out of emotion, whether it's being in denial. But like at this point in the trial, like thinking about like going in order, right? This is the first trial, right? This is early on. We haven't gotten into any of the science or stuff yet, like that yet. Like I remember thinking as the trial progressed, I remember thinking back to the family and, you know, when they testified and thinking to myself as it would show them in the gallery. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I wonder what must be going through their heads right now, because they must be livid. They must hate the Commonwealth. Like I can't imagine their whole world's getting turned upside down right now because it's so obvious, right? Like this is what I was thinking to myself. Like, it's so obvious. Like, how are they handling this? And then it was like, I remember it was a turning point when Paul O'Keefe gave that interview. And Kits, I remember you were there when that came out because we watched it. And I just remember specifically that, like, I think you were there for the whole thing and we watched it a couple times. But anyways, I remember being shocked by that because I was like, oh my gosh, it's like doubling, tripling down. And it's like, how do you just completely disregard? But that was after the first trial. And when you think about even how much more science came out in the second trial, in terms of just, there's no way he was hit by a car. It's just, it dwarfed what came out in the first trial. And already that was so monumental, you know, of the amount of evidence. And so it takes a certain type of person, I feel like, to be able to, or choose to just disregard reality to that degree. Right. And it'd be one thing if this was like just after his death, but it's been years, you know, and at a certain point, one has to accept like, you know what I mean? And that's for me where it gets tough, because it's like, in hindsight, knowing how the evidence came out, it's hard to not think that there's some amount of bias here, because it's enough to blind them from the truth today. If that makes any sense, you know what I mean? Like, they're not able to see the truth. So, you know, I take a lot of this with more salt than I would have at the time, you know, hearing it for the first time, just given how the evidence came out, you know what I mean? So.
Oh.
You know, it's like, I'm just thinking back to Jackson too, when he says, you know, I think this was from the first trial, right? Was this the first trial or second trial? When he had in closing arguments, I see the truth and I will not look the other way. Was that the first or the second trial? Anyway, I see the truth and I will not look the other way. It's like, for them, it's like they don't see the truth, but if they did, they would be looking the other way. But they're not even to the point where they can see it, and they're looking the other way. That's kind of how I would interpret it.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Judge, I'm sighing.
Just one last question, ma'am. So in regard to those last two statements that you had testified about, was that all part and parcel of the same conversation when the defendant indicated she was driving back with her father to Dighton?
Correct.
Okay. So there was no further conversation after that conversation shortly after 1 p.m.?
No.
Okay. I have nothing further for this witness.
All right. Cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. We have no questions.
All right, Ms. O'Keefe, you're all set. Thank you.
All right, peeps, here's what we're going to do. This was a lot to tolerate. The next witness is this Mr. Seraph. So we got a first responder here. He has a little bit of testimony, and then they break for the day. And there's one sidebar at the very end of the day, basically just discussing the plans for the next day. Here's what we're going to do, because he just gets started with his testimony and then they pick up with his testimony on day 2. What we're going to do is we're going to break it here, so that way we have a clean break between opening statements and the first 2 witnesses, which are the family members. And that way we can pick up with the tail end of day 1 and then go into day 2, where we can watch his testimony, you know, flowing through, if you will. Right. So we will have the tail end of day 1 and then day 2. Now, you know, one of the things is, because Judge Bev had all these half days, right? Day 2 is one of those half days. So we might even be able to get through day 2 and then maybe some of day 3 off to see how long what deals with day 3, if that was another half day. But basically, you know, this was a full day in trial. So we should be able to get through day 2 and then maybe some of day 3 and on the next one. I've already got those sidebars ready to go. And yeah, and that's part of it too, right? No, I totally agree. Like, I think part of it is like the fact that they were deceived by the Commonwealth, right? I think is part of it. Definitely part of it. But still, man. And I mean, I understand grief, you know, it's just, I don't know. I'm also very much a realist, though. Like, I want to know the truth and be in reality, but that's just me. So do you think that they still trust the Commonwealth and law enforcement? I guess they have to. That's the part that's just, I can't wrap my head around it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so hard it's just hard. Now, remember too, the other thing is, like, we've got with all the different civil suits, right? There's that one suit where everybody's all grouped together. Now, I don't think the O'Keefes are in there. It's like the McCabes and like Higgins, and then, you know, the one where it's like one attorney's representing five of them, the House defendants, and it's like, what the heck? I mean, that's a mess. That's a whole mess. That can't. There's no way that can stand like that. There's just no way, because the conflicts are just, it's ridiculous. But I feel like they're still very much aligned with, you know, the position that they're taking so far in the pleadings that have come out in the civil cases. I feel like they're still very much aligned with with law enforcement and with the Commonwealth. I mean, the thing is like, they don't necessarily have to be, right? Like they could still go forward with like the wrongful death suit and everything without being so like they don't have to necessarily be fully in support of the Commonwealth and law enforcement and all that. You know what I mean? Like the wrongful death could stand alone if it was, well, if there was anything to it, right? Like if it was plausible. But in other words, like they could still have that, you know, they could still bring that claim and file that complaint like they have without being so like pro Commonwealth and pro law enforcement. But I just feel like the position that they're taking, they're still very much aligned from what we've seen so far. It'll be interesting to see if that changes as things progress, you know. And it sucks because the one Karen's is going to probably end up being in federal court, and then we won't get to see as much of it, but or any of it really. And so yeah. Right, the Commonwealth and the McAlberts. Right, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was meaning. Yeah. Where it gets tricky for them, so they could still take their stance for wrongful death, and they wouldn't necessarily need to be like pro Commonwealth, pro McAlberts for that, because that's them. You know, their burden there is just wrongful death, right? That Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe, right? Where it gets tricky is in the countersuit, right? So where it gets tricky for the O'Keefes in terms of how are they going to align with Commonwealth and the McAlberts or not, because the countersuit, right? The counterclaim is where we're getting into, because one of her defenses, right, being that, you know, it wasn't her. It's not wrongful death because it wasn't her, because it was, you know, these other people, right? The House defendants. And so that's when you get into them being intertwined with the Commonwealth and the McAlberts, because if it was just straightforward, their own initial claims, that wouldn't necessarily have to be the case. It's when you get into them defending the countersuit, or the counterclaim, I guess, rather, that they have to then, you know, it's like all these different lawsuits going on at the same time, where now they're going to have to take a standpoint definitively on the side of the Commonwealth and the McAlberts in order for her defense against their wrongful death claim, right? So if that makes sense. So, and maybe they saw that coming to a certain extent, and so they were prepared for that. But like, yeah, I mean, that's sort of the thing where it's like, it's definitely going to be like, there's picking sides involved once with all those other subsequent claims that were filed, or complaints. It's like, yeah, the picking of sides, right? Because yeah, it is a clusterfuck, to say the least. That is facts. That is facts. It is an absolute mess, and it's just insanity. So anywho, guys, I'm so happy to see you guys. I'm so glad I had time to do a live stream. Like I said, I'm hoping to be able to do one tomorrow. We'll have to see. Like I said, I don't have as many lessons, but I don't know yet if there's going to be stuff going on with the family, given, you know, the holidays and what have you. But I'm hoping to be able to do another live stream tomorrow night where we can pick up where we left off. So, but we're just going to do the best we can and make our way. You know, again, not all the sidebars have come out yet. So, you know, that it's not the end of the world, because we can kind of go along here with it. And yeah, you know, I don't have a lot I can compliment Bev on, though, but the one thing I can say is I love the color of her Tumblr, because I love that color, as you guys know. And she has that all trial, and I think she had that all second trial as well. So, you know, good for her not being wasteful, I suppose. Anywho, but yeah, I love you guys. Y'all are the best. Squirrel crew for life. And we will be back together soon. But until next time, squirrel out. Squirrel out.